Hello and welcome back to my channel The Bleach Fanfiction. Join us as we explore the world of fanfiction and fantasy and bring you the best story and discussions. This is the 10th part of What If Ichigo's Time Travel Made Him Unstoppable. By Grimlock_Bragi.so. Give this video a like and subscribe for more videos in future, so let's get into the fanfic. A roar came from Chad's throat as he launched another blast of Ryatsu into the cliff face before him. It was filled with enough destructive force that it blew a hole the size of a semi-truck in the cliff. The wall of stone was littered with such holes, simultaneously examples of how much effort he had put in, how much he had grown from mere fist or arm-sized dents, and how far away he remained from being able to reliably defend Ichigo's back. Considering the orange-haired man had awakened to the fact that he enjoyed fighting in between his time travel, the giant had seen impressively little of the hybrid in combat. What he had seen left him feeling inadequate. The 15-year-old with nothing to his name but a really big sword had still undoubtedly been the strongest of their invading force. Chad had no reservations about admitting that, but the honey-eyed teen had still looked at him with the complete confidence that he could trust the taller boy with his back. And back then, the gap between them was comparatively small enough that he felt confident he could be trusted with such a role. However, Chad was just a human, while Ichigo was very much not. The sheer degree of power necessary to be embarrassed by the truth of being able to slaughter what amounted to an omnipotent god proved that he didn't need anyone to watch his back, let alone someone who couldn't even defeat a captain. Which left the quiet man frustrated. The deal they had made to protect each other was important to the Mexican. As important to him as his abuelo's coin. Being able to do good with his arms left him with immense satisfaction and pride. With purpose and meaning. Finding out that he could no longer fulfill his end of that deal, or at least that trying to was a moot point, had brought him to Yhwach. It had taken some getting used to that he was a she, as well that Cat was actually a woman, and even further that woman was a captain, but talking to a person rather than an animal helped dissuade some of the awkwardness he felt. This was further supported by Orihime also having gone to the Catwoman for help. The giant truly felt for the auburn-haired girl. He could easily say that Ichigo's time traveling had likely resulted in the most damage to her psyche than any of the others in their group. They had all been under the impression that their pseudo-leader had been the only one unaware of her crush, only for the older version to casually, subtly, reveal that he was actually in a relationship with the 4th Division captain. Then Yhwach explained in private that he actually was dating her as well, with all parties aware and consenting. Worse, the feelings of inadequacy that Chad knew the busty girl felt could have only been that much more painful when she was notably excluded from the list of those receiving training. The silent giant was at least able to take comfort in the knowledge that he would grow in strength to such an extent Ichigo felt it necessary to train him alongside captains, but Bubbly Girl was the only name he had left out from his inner circle. Their powers still largely unfamiliar to her, Yhwach had accepted being their trainer again, but with the warning that it wouldn't be the most efficient thing. The two of them had accepted that easily, their foray into the Soul Society making it that much clearer that their powers are fundamentally different from anything anyone had ever encountered before. Which left them operating in a similar manner to how their training proceeded before invading the Godai. Chad had been working to strengthen his as-of-yet named Ryatsu blast by working past his limits, while Orihime tried to reduce her casting time while making her abilities work more effectively. A loud crash echoed throughout the basement they were training in, causing the three present to turn to the source. They hadn't had any reason to stray far from the ladder entrance, so they all had an uninterrupted view of the large dust cloud that formed at the base of it. A silhouette appeared, stepping in their direction with a casual stride as the dust began to settle. Due to the lack of any killing intent or even any sense of urgency, the trio remained completely relaxed as the figure came close to the edge of the cloud and walked out of it. "Shiro?" Yhwach asked, sounding surprised at his presence. With his hands in his pockets, the hollow sauntered forth, an unhurried expression on his face as he gradually came to join them. "Sup Yhwach, Chad, Fairy?" he greeted. Orihime shuffled on her feet, the giant noticing she inched herself ever so slightly behind the Catwoman. "Isn't Ichigo with Rukia right now in the Soul Society?" The violet-haired woman questioned. Was there something important about that? Ichigo had impressed upon them by now that his Zanpakuto spirits largely were given freedom to do their own thing. Chad didn't really see why Yoruchi was asking about where the sword's wielder was. Yup. There was a look in the hollow's face that indicated he knew why the ex-captain had asked that question, and that he was enjoying answering it. "'S why I walked here," Steta sonidoed. "Better talk conserve energy where we can, you know." Both humans looked over to the dark-skinned woman. Chad, at least, was able to glean an answer from her utterly dumbfounded expression. It told him that this was another example of Ichigo casually doing something that likely was seen as extremely difficult if not outright impossible by anyone else's standards. "Is there something wrong about Shirokuen walking around Karakura town?" Orihime asked innocently. Most Shinigami find it difficult to manifest their Zanpakuto spirit at all, let alone for long periods of time. The woman moved a hand out to gesture at the hollow that was looking distinctly smug about whatever Yoruchi was about to reveal. Yet here Ichigo is, manifesting his Zanpakuto spirit in a different goddamn dimension. Don't forget that Asen is with Needle right now in his basement. 2 Zanpakuto spirits. Her voice raised to a shriek. Thought you were used to our bullshit? The inverted double wondered. Just because it makes sense that you're brokenly overpowered enough to do this doesn't mean that casually going against everything Shinigami believe is possible is any less insane. You didn't lose your sheet like this last time. He held a hand to his chin in thought. I imagine it was because I was realizing you could do these things the same time Ichigo realized he could do these things. A wide, fanged grin ripped across the hollow's face. Oh, we're gonna have so much fun fucking with people with this. The Catwoman's eyes widened as she undoubtedly realized all of the abilities Ichigo cultivated in his time were likely to be used in pranks that no one could possibly be prepared for. But in the meantime, it's Chad's turn for trainin', so you ready to go ta Hueco Mundo? You're gonna dash. Yoruchi mentally crashed. With the context given to him, Chad could sympathize. Yes. The silent giant nodded. He had a good feeling he knew why they were going to train in Hueco Mundo. After all, his arms tingled like there was a perpetual shudder going through them at Shiro's presence alone. With his grin remaining upon his face, the hollow dug his fingers into the air to his right and pulled down, ripping open a void between worlds that the teenager remembered hollows used. Nice and decisive, just like always. Come on, hop dash. Can I come with you too? The auburn-haired girl rushed out. The Zanpakuto paused, clearly not having expected the minor outburst. However, after recovering from a moment spent just blinking in surprise, the hollow did not shoot her down. He didn't comment at all, actually, instead choosing to focus his yellow eyes on her face, his grin being hidden for now. A critical glare adopted him, watching the healer suppress her nervous tremors and already misty eyes. Considering what had already come from the mouth of the Zanpakuto's wielder, Chad honestly thought that the spirit was going to somberly announce that nothing would come of it. From the look on the busty girl's face, she was expecting the same. Instead, the hollow sighed. We're FNG idiot. He spat. Yeah, you too. He waved for them both to join him as he stepped inside the rip between dimensions. I'll be at home, I guess. Yoruchi rolled her eyes at finding her plan for the day was suddenly taken from her. Chad and Orihime entered the Garganta, marveling at the glowing razor path beneath their feet. King's probably gonna need a lot of cuddles when he gets back, if the storm inside his head is any indicator. The spirit announced. Thanks for the heads up. The woman nodded appreciatively before the closing of the portal cut off their vision of her. Okay, let's go. Weaving his fingers together behind his head, the Zanpakuto sauntered forth along the path. The 2 humans joined him swiftly. We're on a time constraint, right? The Mexican teen raised his hand as he voiced his concern. Wouldn't it be faster to have you grab us and use a speed technique to get us to the other side? Well, yeah, but I wasn't fucking with Yoruchi when I said I walked there to save energy, and she wasn't playing up how strong it is to keep spirits going, was the explanation. We might make it look easy, but it really is insane that we can even pull this off. Basic upkeep is something King can manage, but using powers all willy-nilly, gonna drain his reserves something nasty. Awesome's a bit easier, cause Quincy techniques primarily use Erasure, but hollow techniques USULLY end up needin' a bit more fuel. That was fair. Chad hummed in understanding of the answer. If the only problem is actually using powers, can't you just pick us up and run? The airhead girl tilted her head cutely. Acidic yellow eyes glanced down at her. I can, just didn't think you'd want me to. The faster we get there, the more time we'll have for training. The, thankfully still, tallest of the three reasoned. The hollow shrugged. Alright, how we doing this? Oh, I know. Orihime smiled. I'll get on Sato-kun's back, then Sato-kun will get on Shiro-kun's back. We'll be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Wait, but none of us are Italian. Hold on, Shiro-kun, are you Italian? Fairy, I'm King's Hollow. Is King Italian? Well, you weren't born the same time Kurosaki-kun was, were you? I was, but what difference does it make? King's never been to Italy. Kurosaki-kun likes pizza, though. What if you had formed when he was enjoying a really good pizza and that made you Italian? That don't even make sense. You think that if your fairies had formed when you were eating a baguette, that woulda made em French? Maybe, I wouldn't judge. Both the hollow and the giant stared at the princess for a moment. I know our brains look like spaghetti and all, but I think you might be the only one with actual noodles for a brain. I'm hungry now. Orihime rubbed her stomach. So am I. Y'all wanna join King and I fair Mr. Grobins after this? You were going to eat McGrobins after this? Chad wondered. We ain't had it this month, so might as well. I'd be happy to. Do you know if they got the newest batch of toys yet? The girl beamed. Nah, that's next month, I think. It's the start of every season that they rotate, yeah. Can we discuss this while we run? The giant couldn't help but ask. Oh shit, yeah. Climb on. They quickly organized themselves, Orihime first being pulled up onto Chad's back, then Chad leaning down to rest his weight on the Zanpakuto, who seemed none the worse for wear. Without so much as a warning, likely just an understanding that they were secure, the manifestation shot forward in an inhuman sprint, hollow physique allowing him to surpass even Shinigami speeds without needing to enhance his body. So, I never paid attention to the dates when they swapped out the toys. All I really know is that the batches are usually reflective of whatever are the biggest things at the moment. Well, yeah, but it's not like they change them out every time there's something big, else they would change a lot more often. If something is big enough, they might swap on a dime to max their sales, but they've gotta have an order to MUSULLY, right? Chad really should have expected that these two would actually resume their conversation upon Shiro settling into a stride. Leaving the Garganta with far more knowledge about children's toys and fast food companies than he entered it with, Chad's attention was instantly drawn to his arms. Standing up from the hollow's back, he allowed Orihime to slide off his as he stared at his palms. The ever-present tingle that had ran through them before had risen to a static-like buzz that coursed across his skin. Oh, you're really feeling it now, eh? Aware that Shiro was the only one who was sure to know what he was talking about, the Mexican nodded his head. Bein' here's gonna do a lot for ya, but we're gonna need to nudge ya a bit to really get ya where we want ya. Another nod. He was expecting that even before they entered the Garganta, but now there was some primal part of him that helped him understand fighting was going to be necessary for unlocking his true power. Be happy to help you out with that, but we need to get something out of the way, first. Fairy. Yes. Sensei. The girl added as she stood to attention. I don't need to tell ya that you're gonna have to stand to the side while Chad and I go at it. He stated, face set in grave seriousness. But I do gotta tell ya in advance that you're gonna have to shut your trap. Both humans blinked in surprise, the command one neither of them had been expecting. What's gonna be comin' out of my mouth is shit Chad needs to hear, shit he needs to accept if he wants to be able to watch Kings back again. At that declaration, the teen turned as serious as the spirit across from him. It made sense that he knew why Chad was so eager to grow stronger, but the newfound awareness that this was why turned him nearly ravenous for the training to start. The direct confirmation that he would reach a point where Ichigo could trust his back even with the enemies the hybrid undoubtedly fought drew out an uncharacteristic impatience that he had to push down. I think I understand. Orihime stated with furrowed eyebrows. Maintaining a look of concern and worry, the girl jogged away until she was a fair distance, then summoned forth her shield in front of her. Not needing to be told, the giant also summoned his arm, feeling his skin shift, distort, and grow more powerful as it darkened to black and red. He grunted in shock at seeing that, rather than the white outlined crimson stripe, there was a weave of crimson markings going up his arm. Even further, instead of the dual prongs that rose from his shoulder, a single hexagonal extension protruded. He found, to his gratefulness, that it was significantly easier to move his arm around, almost none of the stiffness that the previous form had. It was still conscious thought rather than automatic movement, but it was akin to post-workout soreness instead of bending a dense piece of RBB that was going against his longing. This the first time you seen that one? Shiro sounded confused. He naturally assumed it was fair, figuring the spirit was comparing everything to the time he came from. A pit formed in his stomach. A small one, since he was receiving training from someone who knew how to make him grow, but a pit nonetheless. I got this earlier where you came from. The doppelganger stared open-mouthed, clearly mentally somewhere else. He collected himself after a moment, nodding in realization. To be fair, last time, you trained against Pineapple, and it was because Fairy had gotten kidnapped by Emo TWK. Chad naturally expressed his confusion at the name, but the spirit steamrolled right past it. Oi, my nicknames didn't get spectacular until later, I just refused to rename people after the fact. Either way, we don't have to work to get you to this arm, so simple pleasures. Now, I don't think I need to tell you why this is all going on. That, at least, his confusion had finally been cleared about. My powers have never been like those of a Shinigami, nor Quincy. I realized the former when we invaded the Soul Society. The latter I could tell the first time I saw Yuryu use his bow. Something about it grated on me, almost recoil from it. I could tell immediately that my power was the furthest thing from it. I guess it just never clicked for me that the furthest thing from a Quincy is a hollow. That also explains why you're the one training me, and not Ichigo or Asen. That's definitely a big part of it. Ain't no one better to train hollows than another hollow. But it ain't the only reason, and the other one's just as important. He felt it, the moment it happened. That half-second flare of instinct that caused him to bring his right arm up to block against the heavy swipe the Zanpakuto spirit whipped around. It crashed into him and dragged him across the sand, his heels remaining firm, but the force too much for his body to absorb on its own. I'm fucking shit at riddles, but this needs to be done a certain way. You'll understand in a sec. Grunting in acceptance, the giant settled himself into a boxing stance. The pale manifestation lunged at him again, and though Chad didn't like being able to see his opponent holding back against him, he was pleased that it was only just barely kept within his ability. Each fist and kick practically rattled his bones, sliding him back along the sands against his will. As much as he wanted to fight back, he knew any hit not from his right arm would do nothing, and it was too busy defending against the assault. Before I get into it, I gotta warn that all this shit is second-hand. The hollow yelled, clearly so that Orihime could hear as well. You got questions, too bad, 'cause I don't got the answers. He spun, delivering a roundhouse kick that nearly made Chad topple. The two OU recalled Foolbringers. King and I were never told the specifics, but the gist is that you were exposed to hollow Ryatsu while you were in your mama's bellies. In terms of how your powers work the way they do, we ain't got a clue. The giant successfully dodged out of the way of a downwards fist, but was too blinded by the resulting cloud of sand to avoid the gut punch. The two you just f'd off fair a bit for comin' back lookin' like you finally knew your place in the world. Everything I'm sayin' now is what you told King. You want advice on that side things, knowin' what you are might help. A throaty growl came from the teen's throat as he threw his first, wild punch. The spirit caught it in his left palm, but there was a degree of pride inside his feral grin before his right fist broke the giant's nose. However, what I can tell ya is that Chad over here grew a lot more from being around hollows than he did from finned that out. This ain't universal. Chad's powers are a hell of a lot more hollow than yours, fairy. So don't try this sheet at home. Spitting out some BLD that had gathered in his throat, the tattooed teen felt a familiar longing burn within him, but he smushed it down as deeply as he could. Standing back up, he built up Ryatsu in his arm. The hexagonal extension split into 3, with his blue energy erupting out of it like a rumbling engine. That being said, there was a look of recognition in the hollow's yellow eyes. I can taste it in your BLD, Chad. You got more than a little bit hollow in ya. You got more in common with the Vizard than King does, at this point. Shinigami got the innate ability to give a voice to the deepest parts themselves, that's what breeds an inner hollow. Fair humans. Works a little different. With a deep bellow, he fired what had built within his arm, a blast of Ryatsu an entire magnitude more powerful than anything he had fired in Urahara's basement, screaming out. Seeing Shiro swing an arm to bat it into a nearby sand dune angered him. Feeling that, he drew in a breath to calm himself. There was a deep buzz and a white sandal crashed into his still broken nose. A guttural yell of pain came from him as he was launched back. It's a hollow's innate instinct to grow in power and dominate those weaker. The Zanpakuto stated. Fair them, they know the only way to get stronger is to devour other souls. But fair humans, who can grow all and their own. Compared to spirits that grow over the course of hundreds years, a human's growth rate is ridiculous. Being able to actually get your butt handed to ya and get strong enough from it to beat what beat you down. Like a hollow's wet dream. Chad climbed to his feet, heaving while spitting out BLD that poured into his mouth every other breath. You think every kid that's big and strong goes out of their way to beat the shit out of everyone they can? Nah, that's all the hollow in ya, big guy. As much as I respect what the guy means to ya, your grandpa did your real dirty makin', you give up fightin', fair your own sake. Twice the Ryatsu that had been in his initial blast was already in his arm, as he couldn't stop himself from glaring hatefully at the hollow. He didn't understand why that made the spirit grin wider. I don't blame I'm for fucking it up. He couldn't ha known you had hollow in your veins. And it ain't like he was entirely wrong, fucking someone up just ta fm up does nothin' fair ya. Choose in, when ta throw your weight around is a major thing hollows gotta learn. But deciding ta never show that you're top dog is why Ichigo ain't able to trust his back to you right now. El directo. Growling straight from his gut was a word that felt like he had always known the answer, but never formed it. His eyes perfectly tracked Shiro lunging to the side of the beam of destruction rather than attempting to fight against it. The spirit seemed even more gleeful than before. That's more like it. His smile was wide enough that it looked close to tearing his skin. You're bloodthirsty. There ain't no reason to deny it, it's like tellin' yourself you ain't your grandpa's grandson. It's a fundamental part, yeah. But it ain't a problem to want to be strong, to fight your way to the top. What's a problem is doing nothing about it. It's just as much an issue to leave it unchecked as it is to pretend it ain't there. His body trembled for a moment, seething desires writhing against his practiced instinct to suppress them. For the first time in a very long time, he loosened the lid a little. What do I do about these urges, then? He shouted. What do I do about this longing to crush everyone in front of me? To beat down everyone that even thinks about fighting back. About this need to rip every strong person I see apart until I'm the last one standing. The uncharacteristic raising of his voice left him breathing, only heightened by the leaking rage that he always kept tightly locked away. The bleached manifestation spread his arms wide, though not as wide as his utterly maniacal smile. Focus it. He screamed back gleefully, his own psychotic madness pouring out encouragingly. Mix your human desires with your hollow instincts. You want to use your strength in service of others. You want to have Ichigo's back, have him trust you to keep him safe as much as you trust him to do the same. You want to murder everyone that challenges you, prove your strength to anyone sentient enough to understand. Do both. Slaughter everyone that dares attack Ichigo from behind. Prove yourself the strongest by crushing anyone that thinks they're strong enough to attack your loved ones. Be the giant that protects your allies and the devil that puts your enemies into the ground. His eyes were wide as the words were absorbed into his brain. A unique combination of words given as advice that intrinsically made him want to argue against it, only to leave himself stumped every time without fail. How could letting his violent cravings out be beneficial for anyone? How could taking advantage of his strength not go against his abuelo's words? How was this not be expressly using his strength for someone else's benefit? How was this not be the perfect outlet so that he would never worry about his inner rage coming out at the wrong time, against the wrong person? How had he not thought of this earlier? He felt his right arm mutate, growing larger and heavier, but also so much more right. Like a heft that was meant to be swung around, almost like a wall had been built into his skin to slam down as an impenetrable shield. He also felt his left arm change, turning denser, more powerful. Gaining an inner thunder like it was all of his BLD-born rage and hungry longing ready to release itself against the next opponent. His mind was not towards looking upon the changes, of admiring them or even taking note of what they were so that he might use them better. His instincts already told him how to use his arms, to maximize their abilities, his right arm's broadness and his left arm's destructiveness. You're going to need to stop holding back. He warned. The hollow across from him, just like he had the whole conversation, spoke the perfect words. You're going to need to make me. Howling in finally unleashed malice, Chad leaped forth with the intent to destroy. Orihime kneeled next to Chad's body, as he laid spread eagle on the sands. Her healing dome was atop him, slowly sealing all of the many gashes that had found themselves upon his form from his practical death match with Shiro. The hollow had inevitably won, a combination of his uniquely extreme handicap and the fact that it was still so incredibly early in the human's training, but it had lasted far longer than the girl had honestly thought it would. Though, that was notably impacted by exactly how much it had taken until the Mexican finally accepted defeat. That being, until he hadn't been able to lift his limbs anymore. She wasn't entirely certain he was conscious at the moment, but he was breathing. Shiro currently was sitting next to her, legs crossed and arms in his lap like a child impatient to leave. So, she paused for just a second at feeling the spirit's yellow pools snap onto her. It's my turn now, right? Right. He groaned, running a hand over his face. F-. So, this ain't gonna be an easy pill to swallow, but it's important for ya. Her body naturally curled in on itself slightly, her shoulders and back hunching as she already realized her greatest worry was about to be absolutely confirmed with no more ability to deny it. Ya ain't a killer. What? Brown eyes blinked in surprise and slowly forming confusion as she turned to the hollow. The trainin' we're givin' out is for makin' people hit harder, ta learn new powers, ta turn 'em into as monstrous as fighters as we can. If they've got a form that makes 'em stronger, we're forcin' 'em ta practice with it whether they wanna use it are not. If they got abilities they don't like using, we're telling them to start leaking them, or else. What we're not doing, what we ain't got no knowledge about, is anything not directly related to murdering the Wandenrake. We need clown, and hat, and clogs to make sheet to counter Quincy's, but we ain't got no clue how to help em make em. We need to deal with all the side bullshit, but we only know enough to deal with em as they come, not stop em, for they happen. Last week, King Maita tore apart any trust most the goatee I had in him, and we're fallin' over ourselves trying to rebuild it. You're the best healer we got, and I honestly ain't seen anything that's managed to get past your shield when you really don't want it to, but your ability to take out enemies is basically nil. You're saying, the reason Kurosaki-kun doesn't have any training plan for me is because he's only training the warriors. Yup. You get stronger, we've seen Yhwach fail to break your shields, and Yhwach basically resurrected the dead, but... He shrugged helplessly. We never paid attention to how you got from A to B. Then, my hope is with whoever helped Sato-kun and I realize we're foolbringers, right? That's what I figure, at least. And Kurosaki-kun has no idea how we met whoever that is, so you have no idea either. Yeah, the Zanpakuto winced, we're kinda useless on that front. But, since we got the time to look, and a kinda sorta idea, about what we're looking for, we could probably get Hat and Clogs or Yoruchi's help. That's true. She agreed. They'll definitely be able to help the search. And, I will admit, it does help a bit to know that I don't end up having to hurt people. I realized when we went to save Rukia that I don't like hurting others. Being the best at defending and healing others is something I'd be happy to be known for. Yuryu Ishida's face was kept in a firm frown as he dressed himself. It has been quite a while since he lost his Quincy powers, and he has been stuck in a rather difficult situation because of it. His father has confirmed that he knows a method to help Yuryu regain his abilities, but refuses to inform him of what that method is without good reason. Try as he might, he has yet to figure out a way to explain Ichigo's time traveling and warnings of the Wandenrake in a way that Ryukin will actually believe. Granted, he's gotten his father to be incredibly suspicious about how he even knows of the existence of the Wandenrake, since the silver-haired man certainly wasn't the one to tell him about them. But as soon as the older Quincy inquires about how he came to have the information, Yuryu meets the brick wall of trying to explain his 15-year-old classmate is actually a 26-year-old war veteran. Infuriatingly, no matter how unwavering Yuryu is in trying to make his father accept the truth, he finds Ryukin is equally as determined to think he's covering for something. Combining a white shirt with a 5-pointed sapphire cross on it with a pair of comfortable black briefs and smart black dress shoes, the last Quincy stewed in his thoughts as he journeyed out of his room towards the dining room. It was a Saturday, therefore he didn't have school, his father was only on call for the hospital, and he likely had all day to come up with a sufficient argument that would get his father to finally agree to help him regain his Quincy powers. Going down the stairs and down a couple halls, he reached out to open the door to the dining hall and stepped inside, his eyes already going towards the head of the table where his father most always sat. The currently powerless Quincy found that his hunting gaze was distracted by a black cloak that rippled in the wind. Wind that was not present inside an enclosed room deep within a well-furnished mansion. The one wearing the cloak which defied physics was tall and broad, a wide pillar of dark that contrasted highly with the light colors of the dining room and the warm sunlight filtering through the windows. Despite standing quietly and politely, their presence demanded attention, an aura of maturity and strength emanating from them that was akin to the warm blanket of protection Ichigo's Ryatsu projected. At the neck of the cloak, a large white upturned collar rippled out, jagged and swaying of its own accord. The only visible part of the figure was their face, that of a man similar in age to Ryukin with a light stubble on his face. His unruly brown hair was indiscernible in length due to its nature of unceasingly swaying about, and his eye color was largely difficult to decipher beyond being dark due to being behind a pair of orange sunglasses. The man stood next to the table, the opposite side that Yuryu was, and staring silently at his father. In contrast to how Yuryu has ever seen him, the silver-haired man was holding a ceramic mug with such tightness that he seemed to be struggling to not shatter it in his grip as he glared at the cloaked figure. He was sitting exactly where Yuryu had figured he would be, but his plate of food was untouched. "My son is here, now." Ryukin growled. "What do you need to discuss that demands his presence?" "Gee, thanks father." The last Quincy immediately mentally groused. "I love not being warned in advance that there's an intruder with unknown intentions who is seeking my presence. Why have you not assisted Yuryu with regaining his Quincy powers? I'm obligated to help him undo the consequences of his own actions." He knew what he was getting into. If he's so unhappy over losing his powers, he should have either not taken off the Sanrei glove or not put it on in the first place. His act of removing the Sanrei glove was in response to combating the Shinigami who performed inhumane experimentation upon other Quincies, including your father Soken. I am aware you hold no pride in being a Quincy yourself, but surely you can understand the longing to enact revenge upon a highly deserving monster. Yuryu's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. How does he know that I took off the Sanrei glove against Kuratsuchi? Or that father doesn't like Quincies? It makes no difference to me why Yuryu decided to make the decision that would result in his losing his powers. He knew that would be the result, he has to live with the consequences. The sunglass-wearing man narrowed his eyes. I can't imagine that Yuryu has not informed you that the Wandenrake are preparing for war in accordance with the Sealed King's prophecy. You are aware that it is not false, yet you possess no longing to assist in fighting against Yhwach. He also knows about the Wandenrake. Who is this person? He seems oddly enthusiastic about me getting my powers back. The Shinigami surely have it covered, my son and I have no reason to intervene. I warn you now, your son will be forced to get involved regardless of your intentions. The Wandenrake will seek to recruit him. And you're so sure of this how? Are you Asen? The teen pieced together. I am. Your name is Bold Man. As stoic as he was, even Ryukin had to question such an oddity. Relief filled the powerless Quincy as he let a sigh escape his body. That is the nickname given to me by my wielder, Kurosaki Ichigo. I am one half of his Zanpakuto, Zangetsu. Ah, the famous Kurosaki Ichigo. The silver-haired man sneered. The supposed time traveler. While I understand that the explanation of time travel is a difficult one to accept, has Yuryu not provided enough information to prove it indisputable? I find it more reasonable for my son to have broken into my office and read through my notebook that describes the history of the Quincy. Father has a what? He couldn't help but be startled by the information. I trust that he would be intelligent enough to pick up that Katajiri's untimely death lines up with the Sealed King's prophecy, and lose his head trying to come up with a counterplan. Therefore you have no interest in assisting him with regaining his powers when you hold the belief that it would only incite him to attack Yhwach. Correct. Delving into your reasoning, you would rather he not attempt to clash with Yhwach due to the Quincy King being far too powerful and possessing of abilities that would render counter-strategies moot. Considering you know so much, I cannot fathom why you would be of any other point of view. The silver-haired man snarked. It is bold of you to claim it is useless to attempt to defeat Yhwach when you have an arrowhead made of still silver. For the first time in his life, Yuryu witnessed his father visibly appear caught off guard, the older man sitting straighter in his seat and delivering a harsh glare to the spirit. And you're aware of this hypothetical object how? He prompted threateningly. You successfully struck Yhwach with it, notably as an act of vengeance for him having murdered your son. Unfortunately, by the time this occurred, Yhwach had consumed so much power that rather than it destroying his powers entirely, it merely stalled him for a brief moment. I don't know why I imagined that you would not support my son's claims of time travel, perhaps I had believed that one of you was actually sane. For someone so generally logical, you seem particularly disregarding of such mounting evidence. Every piece of evidence you've given to me is coincidental at best and none of it is something that is impossible to know without such nonsensical means like time travel. The man slowly relaxed as he talked, easing his grip on his mug. So you claim, yet you were so perturbed just a moment ago that I knew of your still silver arrowhead. You managed to get into my house without alerting anyone. It's reasonable that my dining room may not have been your first stop. He reasoned. There are some who would be shocked by this information, but just because we are from the future does not mean that we know of everything between the moment we came back and the moment we left. We are only aware of your arrowhead due to witnessing you use it. I know not of where you hide it, nor, obviously, of the method you use to assist Yuryu with regaining his powers. The spirit explained. However, I warn you now, what we are aware of is that Yuryu will be a part of the upcoming war. His dormant abilities are something Yhwach seeks to claim for himself, and the Quincy King will stop at nothing to acquire them. If you do not assist your son with his powers, Yhwach will provide them for him, and we both know what the result of that would be. The older Quincy tested his jaw as he considered a response. Are you implying that Yuryu would accept Yhwach's offer? You have already displayed your awareness that he is likely to attempt to plot against the Quincy King. Do you not think he would acknowledge he could not defeat Yhwach in a straightforward battle, and instead seek to gain his trust so that he might stab him in the back? Once more, Ryuken's fingers tightened on his mug, while Yuryu shyly looked to the ground, as that described his mindset to AT. I will accept that you make a good point, but that does not mean I am suddenly going to bow my head and follow your instructions. Regardless of my being a Quincy, I have my pride. In the face of that, you're still going to stand by your decision? The raven-haired teen balked. What are your terms? Asen asked, aware of the meaning behind the silver-haired man's particular phrasing. What were they in this previous timeline you supposedly hail from? To cease any and all interactions with Shinigami henceforth, however, the circumstances were different. In what way? Originally, there was no overbearing threat hanging over your heads. There were Arankar, as well as Aizen, but the latter was entirely separate and the former largely did not antagonize Quincy. For all intents and purposes, Yuryu simply wanted to possess Quincy powers at the time that he requested your assistance. Then, my terms are that I will only assist my son in regaining his powers. I will not assist in any way for his training, I will not be asked for advice, and none of my Quincy equipment may be used. As soon as he displays that his abilities have returned, I will have absolutely no part in this. We accept your terms. Ryuken's eye twitched, Yuryu taking that as a sign that the man didn't expect the spirit to agree so readily. However, the deal had already been made, and it was against the man's pride to adjust the terms after they had already been decided. Then, seeing as we have today off, we will begin once breakfast is finished. He instead announced. The sunglass-wearing manifestation nodded in acceptance. May I seat myself? Asen asked politely. You may. The older Quincy hummed easily. Stepping forward, a pair of arms pulled out from the perpetually flowing darkness of the spirit's coat and slid out one of the chairs. He then gracefully lowered himself onto the seat and inched the chair forward. Would you like some tea? I would be grateful. Not needing to be ordered, one of the maids standing along the walls came forward and poured the Zanpakuto a cup of tea. It is much appreciated. The brunette bowed his head. Trying to regain his bearings, Yuryu joined the two at the table, his own plate being placed in front of him. I can't believe it only took you one conversation to get him to finally agree to helping me, thank you, Asen. You are very welcome, Yuryu. As a close friend of Ichigo's, even if the BLD war were not hanging over our heads, I would not hesitate to help you wherever I am able. I am truly grateful for it. The teen flashed a gentle smile before turning serious. I hope you don't mind if I take advantage of that now. You must have questions, then. I cannot guarantee that I will answer them all, but do not refrain from asking. You mentioned Yhwach wants my dormant abilities. What did you mean by that? First and foremost, one of the most pivotal reasons why Yhwach is such a dangerous threat is that he possesses the ability to give his power to others. What so many are blind to do to that, is the price for him giving his power to others is that, eventually, that power returns back to him. He delivers a portion of his soul to you, then, upon your death, he reclaims that portion, along with all of the power, knowledge, and skill you've accumulated. The spirit informed. Secondly, he is able to perceive latent capabilities within others, and use his ability to bestow power to name those capabilities and forcefully awaken them. I will not tell you what your latent power is, but it is powerful enough that Yhwach hungers for it. I imagine, then, that part of my training will consist of activating those latent powers of mine. It will consist of attempting to. Yuryu's eyebrows furrowed at the confusing statement, while Ryukin raised one of his own in idle curiosity. We have only witnessed Quincy's possessing unique powers through scripts engraved onto them from Yhwach. We are aware he is only able to name that which already had the potential to be, but we are not aware of any other methods for Quincy to activate their unique abilities than via Yhwach's BLD. Thus, once your powers have reawakened, we will be trying out various methods to try drawing out your latent capabilities. His ability to forcefully awaken powers stems from his ability to give out power. What if we got the help of someone else who can also give out their power? The teen tried to help. The only other we are aware of who possesses the ability to give others portions of their power is Jugram Hashwolf. Hashwolf is the Grand Master of the Stern Ritter and right hand of Yhwach. Oh. Thankfully, Kukaku hadn't moved the Shiba house in the time since we went over to stop Rukia's execution, so we didn't need to go looking for it. Yoruchi and Unohana were with me, the workcat having laughed herself silly at the thought of me presenting them to Kukaku like I was introducing girlfriends. As soon as we stepped past the archway, which currently was still a pair of arms, Koganehiko and Shiraganehiko stormed through the front doors. Yoruchi-sama, Unohana Taicho, Kurosaki-san. Greetings. They shouted in perfect tandem. You get Sama and I just get San. I muttered jokingly. No respect for a two-time war hero, huh? Yoruchi's bark of laughter sounded next to me, before she pat me on the back. Ah, is the god-killer feeling underappreciated? She teased, a fanged grin upon her face. Well, obviously being paid more than a captain and having most of the Godii willing to do anything I order them to isn't enough. I smirked back. People are still using San for me for Christ's sake. Anything less than Sama is just insulting. Both of the women giggled. I'll be sure to keep that in mind, Ichigo-sama. Unohana breathed sultrily. A pleasant shiver went up my spine at the sound. I'm gonna love going to bed tonight. Came out under my breath, before a smile rose to my own face. Koganehiko, Shiraganehiko, we're just here to say hi to Kukaku. I promised her a few weeks ago that I would share a drink with her, and I'd rather not test her patience any more than I already have. Yes, yes. The one with the yellow top, I honestly was never able to figure out which was which, nodded his head vigorously. The other one, with the white shirt, bolted inside. Kukaku-sama has been waiting eagerly for your arrival. Please, follow me. Sure. The three of us stepped inside after him, following him down a couple halls until he stopped us at a set of sliding doors, the smell of smoke emanating from within. He bowed at the waist before us. Kukaku-sama is just beyond these doors. I will join my brother Shiraganehiko in preparing a feast for all of you. He declared before rushing off at a breakneck pace. Their enthusiasm is nice. I smiled wistfully. It is. The goddess of Flash agreed with a similar tone. Without wasting any more time, because the head of the Shiba clan was likely to throw something at us if we did, Yoruchi and I pulled open the doors. Finally got here, did ya? The firework MSTR called immediately. Thought I'd have to send Ganju to bring you over. One of my eyebrows raised as we all stepped inside. You thought that would work? He got you in here the first time, didn't he? She smirked back. No, he fought me in here after Yoruchi brought us here. corrected. The one-armed woman waved for us to take the cushions in front of her, which we all wordlessly accepted. Especially now, if you think Ganju can successfully hog-tie me and drag me to the Shiba compound, you're gonna end up surprised. I don't have to worry about it anymore, anyway. Kikuko shrugged before taking a puff of her pipe. So, I hear you finally realized you've got Shiba BLD in ya. Not that I don't think you haven't figured it out by yourself, but my dad is Ishin. I announced. She nodded in response. Yeah, everyone else had written him off, but I had this feeling that he hadn't been done in just yet. Nice to know he settled down. He did settle down, yeah. Her left eyebrow raised in a demanding curiosity. He did. I smiled back. I'm the oldest of 3, got 2 twin sisters that are both 11 right now. My mom unfortunately died from a hollow attack almost 10 years ago, longer story than you'd think. A frown marred her face at the information. How'd he take that? She worried. How sounds like bullshit, but we all managed to get our goodbyes in. I soothed. She lives on in our hearts. The head of the Shiba clan nodded in approval. Just how Kyan would want it. Was her soft hum. The woman continued before a somber atmosphere could even form. So are you gonna be the only one stopping by, or do I get to meet these apparent cousins of mine? I got no problem with connecting the family, but I'll leave it up to you whether you want to come down to the world of the living or have them come up to the Soul Society. Kisuke's got a Matatoreishi converter as well as an used gig ace, we've got the means either way. Having an excuse to go to the world of the living sounds nice. Another puff of smoke. I could check out if they've got some fireworks I can take inspiration from. We'll make sure to arrange for you to come down for a festival. It'll be fun to see how you top their displays. A wide grin ripped across the one-armed woman's face. Good to see you already know. A quick cackle erupted from her. Someone dumber would phrase that as a question. Yoruchi and I laughed along with her, Unohana just sitting to the side with a pleasant smile on her face. You're the fireworks MSTR for a reason, Kikuko-chan. The workcat giggled. If mere humans could make a better fireworks display, then something isn't right. You got that right. The woman took another hit of her pipe. The girls, given their age, are sure to be in school, but what about Uncle Ishin? He can pop by for a few and be home in time for dinner, can't he? He probably feels all guilty right now since he's realizing you're all supposed to think he's dead. I'll help Ganju tie him to Bonnie if you want to give him the old Shiba welcome. I grunted. I think I'm really starting to like you, Ichigo. Her green eyes gleamed with mischief. She tilted her head and opened her mouth. Yo! Shiraganahiko. Bring a bottle of sake. Bellowed from her. Instantly, a series of rapid footfalls rocketed down the hall before the man in the white top pulled the door open, shot up to Kikuko, gracefully placed a ceramic bottle on the mat next to her, and flew out of the room, shutting the door behind himself. The one-armed woman gripped her pipe with her teeth before reaching out and picking up the bottle, eyeing me as I leisurely sat back with no intentions to help her out. With the pipe still in her mouth, her lips curled up in approval as she uncorked the bottle with her thumb and first finger, her other 3 fingers holding it still. Tossing the cork behind her, she lowered the bottle back down and pulled open a drawer on the small stand next to her, taking out 4 saucers for sake. Time traveling really did wonders for that head of yours, eh? She grinned as she poured for each of us. I've gotten the sheet kicked out of me by people short a limb or 2 enough to know it's only patronizing to ask first. I stated as I accepted a cup. Unless they're stupid. The firework MSTR noted. But you ain't stupid. I knew the answer to that bait. All 3 women laughed at my response. Once everyone had their cup in hand, we all raised them together. So, what are we toasting to? Family reunions. The head of the Shiba clan announced. Especially since these two are bound to be part of it sooner or later. She nodded to Yoruchi and Unohana. Words gotten around that much? Yoruchi seemed surprised. No, you idiot, I'm looking at the three of you right now. You're more obvious than Kaien and Miyako. I snorted at the look of surprise that painted both women's faces. To family reunions. And growth. I smirked. Kakaku smirked right along with me, and after a moment, both of my girlfriends raised their saucers once more. Kanpai. Kanpai. They cheered after me before we all downed our first cup. So, where's Ganju? I wondered as I poured the second cup for each of us. I know we didn't exactly warn you guys that we were coming over, but I haven't seen you call for him to get back inside. Oh, the brat is still going around with those other brats he hangs out with. She sighed. Either Shiraganahiko or Koganahiko probably rang the bell as soon as you joined me. Dumbass probably just thought it was the lunch bell or something and figured that he could just make do with buying some ramen. I could grab him if you want. I muttered around a sip of sake. The Shiba way, of course. A look of interest appeared in her eyes. You talk like you know a lot about the Shiba way, so how about you put your money where your mouth is? Let's see how you bring my younger brother over here. She challenged. An excited grin curled across my face and I placed my saucer down on the mat. Focusing for a moment, I searched for Ganju's Ryatsu, pinning it down in the middle of a nearby Rukongai district. Once his location was locked in, I stood up, cracked my knuckles, and shunpaed at my fastest while my sword was sealed to him. He and his gang were riding their boars down a street made up of restaurants, which I interrupted by picking him straight off Bonnie and tearing back to the Shiba compound without slowing down. Stopping at the doorway to the room Kakaku, Yoruchi, and Unohana were in, I spun around once before hurling him inside. Kurosaki DLVRY service. I shouted with glee. He only managed to begin screaming after he left my arms, it having been too fast for him to register that he had even been moved. Flailing as he shot across the room, his back slammed into the wall behind Kakaku, with him upside down. Once his momentum died, he slid down right onto his skull, his body flopping to the ground. His older sister was hunched over laughing. That'll teach ya to always listen when I ring for ya. She declared between bursts of laughter. You wouldn't want to miss your cousin coming to visit, would ya? What cousin? He demanded as soon as he got up, rubbing the top of his head. The only ones here are Yoruchi-chan, Unohana Taicho, and that Kurosaki brat. You're still calling your cousin a brat even after we've shared a drink? You didn't bother to learn your manners, did you? I barked with a grin on my face. Just 'cause we've drank together doesn't mean you're not a brat. I'm over 10 times your age. And? Toshiro is a captain, you're gonna call him a brat too? Of course not. He's put in the work to get to a high position. I'm in a higher position than he is. Are you an idiot? You're a substitute. Kakaku laughed even harder at that, Unohana. Beginning to giggle. Behind her hand. Keep up with the times, dumbass, I'm a war preparation leader. I outrank Yamamoto when the situation calls for it. His eyes practically bulged out of his skull. Huh? When did that happen? How did that happen? I laughed at his incredulity. How about you sit down with us and I'll tell you two all about it over some drinks and some food? Oh, sure. His eyes flitted around the room for a moment in curiosity. Though, wouldn't it be rude to start before this cousin of mine gets here? Unohana and Yoruchi burst into a new round of laughter while Kakaku simply facepalmed. You idiot, I'm your cousin. Huh? You are. He gaped. I'm Ishin's kid, you moron. Why do you think I'm the splitting image of Kaien? I thought that was just coincidence. He defended, before his eyes widened further. Uncle Ishin is alive. Kakaku pulled out the drawer from the stand next to her and hurled it into his face. I told you, you dimwit. I thought you were just being crazy. She stood with a furious expression on her face at his argument, stomping towards him. You want me to show you me being crazy? Wait. I take it back. I didn't mean it. Big sis. The food just got here. He begged, crawling back on his hands and knees. Like that'll matter to you when you've got a broken jaw. Ichigo. Your family. Help a cousin out here. Hey, don't look at me, I'm not the one dumb enough to insult Kakaku to her face. I smirked. Terror filled his visage as he attempted to run. He didn't even make it out of the room. You, really like this cave, don't you? Renji awkwardly wondered as we entered the Bankai training grounds. Don't think I didn't catch you bragging to the other lieutenants about how you first unlocked Bankai here. I shot back. That doesn't really counter my point, though. He muttered. Hey, the Wandenrake don't know about it, there's a lot of space, it's kinda strong to beat in terms of what we need, okay? I defended. You're not really saying that you don't like this place a lot. The tease in his voice was clear. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, it doesn't matter. Huffed out from me. Ah, Strawberry-san has a favorite training spot. He spoke in baby tone. Oh F off. My eyes rolled. Yep, regardless of my attempts to act like it didn't irritate me, people still started calling me Strawberry. Here's hoping Ranjaku wouldn't come up with Strawberry Sunrise a second time. The redhead's laughter filled the air. I crossed my arms over my chest and allowed him to let it all out. It didn't take him long, thankfully. Alright, alright. He had a small smile on his face as he gathered himself. So what's this cool new form you're gonna help me get? I blinked. What? I'm gonna get a new form from this, right? He asked, like it was a rhetorical question. From what I've heard, everyone else you've gone to has gotten new forms. Yamamoto. So shocked by his revelation, I couldn't do anything but think of how he was wrong. I mean, you specifically said that the training for Kairaka Taicho, Yukatake Taicho, and Yamamoto Suteicho was just to keep them in top shape. Everyone else has gotten new forms. Well, except for Kachiki Taicho, but I've heard him mention new techniques with his Bankai. Unohana. All of the lieutenants except for Kotetsu Fukuteicho have more or less agreed that her undoing her braid turns her into a different person. He justified. I tilted my head in consideration of that idea, before shrugging in acceptance. Momo. I declared. He stared at me for a moment, blinking slowly. Does making friends with your hollow really count as training? The tattooed man asked uncertainly. What? No. She was supposed to be inventing new Kido spells. I paused in my arguing to let the situation really settle into my head. Which Shiro can't cast as a hollow. And when we don't know how she invented the spells she did. A single raised eyebrow was the pineapple's response. She'll have more time to invent since she's not depressed. Aren't you supposed to be some sort of Kido MSTR now? He challenged. Shouldn't you know the Kido spells she's invented so you could show her and give her an idea on how to reinvent them? Okay, so, I learned spells from Tensai and Hachi, and the only time I really use Kido is when I use Bakudo spells to prevent my enemies from getting out of the way of my attacks. He appeared instantly baffled. I've seen your attacks, when would you need to pin your enemies in place? When I really want them to feel it. I explained. But we're getting off topic. As much as I hate to give you this, your training will be you pretty much getting a new Bankai. He smirked smugly. So I was right. After a moment of looking all proud of himself, doubt crept onto his face. Wait, how am I getting a new Bankai? Well, to be more specific, you're getting your complete Bankai. Shiro and I decided that the best term for what you've got now is a free trial Bankai. Free dash, the tattooed man scrambled for the right words to say for a long moment. But, I manifested Zabumaru all on my own. I defeated him without any help. Hell, you were the one that used that Chitsi Tenshintai. That's true, but also consider that I wasn't even using Zangetsu when I got that Bankai. That was Asen faking my powers. I explained. And by the time I got around to using my actual Zanpakuto, I could manifest Zangetsu without even thinking about it and had long since already defeated both of my Zanpakuto spirits. So your point is moot. Then, if there ended up being no difference between how you got your Bankai and me, why do I have the free trial Bankai, huh? He groused. Because I never lied to myself about why I needed Bankai. And, while I once did half lie to myself about why I wanted to get stronger, I eventually stopped. I crossed my arms over my chest while I stared him down. Why did you seek out getting Bankai? To save Rukia. He announced without hesitation. Okay, so let's squint our eyes, tilt our heads sideways, and pretend that we're gonna go back all the way to when you were sent out to retrieve Rukia from the world of the living. That's like 2 weeks towards training for your Bankai under the guise of wanting to save Rukia. I let that linger in the air to sink in. So, that's bullshit. It's what got me through that final push. He justified. But not why you started. Was my counter. Any halfway decent lieutenant trains for Bankai. He shrugged. Chojiro explicitly only got Bankai for Yamamoto, Izuru is genuinely afraid of what his Bankai might be, Momo is better with Kido than she ever might be with a Bankai, and Nanao and Nimue don't even have Zanpakutos. What about Marekyo-san? You don't even respect him enough to call him a lieutenant. I pointed out immediately. Kotetsu Fukuteicho. The man made no attempt to refute my words. Like Momo, Isane is better off leaning into her specialty, which is Kaido. Iba Fukuteicho. Do you even know what his Zanpakuto does? I challenged. Hiseiji Fukuteicho. He crossed his own arms over his chst, tilting his chin up like he just won the argument. I'm gonna deal with Shuhei on my own. The tattooed man's eye twitched. Matsumoto Fukuteicho. She's too busy being lazy to realize that the problem is that she's too lazy. Kusajishi Fukuteicho. He tried. She is a Bankai. The man physically stuttered, retreating a couple steps as his face contorted in confusion and shock. And before you embarrass yourself even further, Rukia is going to be the next lieutenant of the 13th. And I was there when you started with her Bankai training. He sighed in defeat. What are you trying to get at, then? Well, I'm trying to help you get your proper Bankai. The thing is, it doesn't work if I just tell you. That's not how powers work. If it was, I would be a lot less stressed out. I muttered the last part under my breath. So, you tell me, why did you start training for Bankai? I don't. What am I supposed to say? 'Cause I learned that Bankai is a thing at the academy and figured everyone else trained for it. Well, we both know that's a FNG lie. My own eyebrow twitched. But I did learn about Bankai at the academy. I'm talking about you seriously thinking everyone at the academy tried to learn Bankai. Oh, yeah. Renji sheepishly kicked at the ground. I did at first, okay. One of my eyebrows shot up. You grew up in the Rakongai and seriously believed academy students tried? I figured, that they were nobles, and that they would, At this, the corner of my lips turned up knowingly. They would. I prompted teasingly. Think they were all that. He grumbled. And that getting Bankai would be easy for them despite what the teachers said, 'cause they were nobles. Good. Keep thinking that. Because that's exactly what they think. I smirked. So, you definitely didn't start learning Bankai because it was the thing to do. Yeah. He relented. I don't got a clue past that, though. Alright. I sighed, rolling my eyes. Let's delve into this. What, are you a therapist, now? We better FNG hope not. Came from my throat immediately. I'd unironically suggest stabbing someone that sees you off. But, you started training for Bankai at the academy, yeah? Not with any success. His shoulders shrugged. Wasn't until I was moved around the squads a couple times that I first managed to manifest Zagamaru. So, what squad were you in when that happened? Squad 6, of course. And, if you were to do your best to narrow down when you first came up with the idea to try for Bankai, when would it end up being? A little bit after Rukia was adopted by the Kachikis and left the academy. The redhead nodded to himself. I stared at him blankly, arms still crossed over my chest. After a moment of awkward silence on his part, he flopped his arms in minor exasperation. I wouldn't, know the date or anything, man. That's honestly the best I can do. Right after Rukia left the academy. Aha. So, we've got when you first wanted to get Bankai and your first breakthrough. Do you see any similarities between those two events? I asked, like he was stupid. Because he was. I felt lonely. The idiot tried. The first time, my best friend stopped talking to me to be adopted into one of the 4 great noble clans, and the second time, I had been put into a squad that was completely different from any squad I had been a part of before. What was the first thing you did when you actually got Bankai? I pushed. Oh, I fought Kuchiki Taicho. He gave a self-assured grin. And, of all the things you could have done, why was that what you did? My right hand lifted and waved for him to keep talking. Well, he looked up in thought, as he seemed to seriously ponder his own actions. Kuchiki Taicho had mentioned a couple times that he would ensure Rukia's execution would go through, even if he had to kill her himself. So, I figured that if I took him out first, then that would be one less thing to worry about for stopping her execution. You know, covering my bases and all that. Okay, so again, are there any constants between those 3 events? The pineapple shifted his arms to hold his chin in his right hand while his left arm supported his right. It's not because I felt lonely, because I was actually feeling real DMN awesome when I went to go fight Kuchiki Taicho. Wait, actually, maybe it was, because I was afraid of losing Rukia. I stepped forward and smacked the side of his head. You dimwit, Byakuya was the connecting factor in all of this. I groused. He was the one that adopted Rukia into his family and took her away from you. You made your first breakthrough in your training when you got passed around into his squad, and your first action after getting your Bankai was to fight him because you wanted to fight him. Ha! He vocalized, his mouth agape. That makes sense, but why is he so important for my Bankai? Pleased we were finally getting somewhere, I breathed a sigh of relief. Because Byakuya puts a face to the name for you. Or a name to the face. No, it's face to the name. I corrected myself, before clapping my hands together and pointing them at him. You're spiteful as F-. Yeah. Renji agreed easily. Byakuya, especially to people that don't know him that well, gives off the air that he looks down on everybody. Yup. His arms went back down to crossing over his chest. He's also the clan head of one of the 4 great noble clans, while you're some stray from the Rukongai. Emichim. The man nodded, following along without issue. Please dear God tell me you're realizing what I'm leading to. I pleaded. His head tilted in thought for a long second, before his eyes widened as clarity appeared in his brown orbs. Kuchiki Taicho is a symbol to me. He breathed. I've always wanted to prove wrong all the people who thought I would never be able to make something of myself. And he's every example people gave for why I wouldn't make it. He's every Shinigami that told me I was just some brat that was a waste of food, every snobby rich noble that said I was dirtying the classrooms just by being there, every professor that told me I should quit while I was ahead. A fanged grin curled onto my face. There we go, halfway there. I announced. I first started training for Bankai because Kuchiki Taicho, the image of everyone that told me I deserved nothing, took Rukia away from me. The redhead realized. I first manifested Zabumaru when I was assigned to be Kuchiki Taicho's unseated underling. I hunted him down for a fight because he thought peasants from the Rukongai weren't prestigious enough to acquire Bankai. Despite the vitriol of the words themselves, only pride dusted his words. A laugh escaped the man. So, what, was all of this to help me understand that I wanted to be stronger to shove it in other people's faces? Like I said, you're halfway there. I wagged my finger at him in the negative. Why are you so focused on proving those people wrong? What makes you so determined to show them that you're not just some stray dog that got lucky? Why does it matter to you that they don't think you're good enough? Newfound confidence backing him, Renji turned to himself once more as he sought to uncover his true motivation. Because I hated the assumptions. He began, his eyebrows furrowed in thought. I hated that people would take one look at me and think I was meant to stay in the dirt. I hated that they thought all those noble asshats were destined for greatness. I hated that every success I had was met with people thinking it was just a fluke. I hated that every failure a noble had was thought to be them just not putting in the effort. I hated the double standards. A savage gleam appeared in his eyes. I wanted to drown them with proof that I meant something. I wanted to beat them into the ground with the knowledge that I had value. I wanted to make it impossible for them to ignore that they were wrong. I wanted to roar so loud that it left them deaf that I decide what I can or can't do, no one else. He met my eyes, undiluted challenge. I want to make Byakuya, the epitome of what everyone told me I could never stand equal to, look me dead in the eye and acknowledge my strength. I met his challenge. I don't need to explain anything else to you, right? His right hand came up to the hilt of his sword and slowly drew it as he spoke. That free trial Bankai Zabumaru gave me was because I did everything I needed to earn Bankai for all the wrong reasons. I wouldn't have let myself have a proper Bankai if I had been in their shoes. He turned his head to his left, and I followed his gaze to see two feral smirks aimed our way from a few meters away. Already, both Monkey and Snake held a copy of their Shirkai in their hands. Snake was even standing on his feet, his tail swishing from side to side like a predator creeping up to its prey. Now that I do know why I'm doing all this, I'm not gonna let myself be handed anything. The man turned towards his Zanpakuto spirit with his blade ready and his fangs out for the world to see. I'm going to earn it by taking it. Took you long enough. Monkey approved. Beat it out of us, the way you were supposed to the first time. Snake supported. Oh make. For want of a strawberry. My fingers rubbed circles in the back of my neck in my attempt to relieve some of the tension that had built up. A sigh partially of frustration and partially of minor relief left me as I trudged up the stairs of the clinic and towards my bedroom. So much planning, so much training, even when I trusted Khan to cover for me in school, I was pulled in so many directions. Yamamoto, the demon he was, and Kisuke, his enabler, had managed to get a system together where all the paperwork Unohana and I had to do was dropped in front of my house every morning that I was in the world of the living. Yes, Unohana and I had paperwork. Between Unohana, Isane, and myself, it had actually not been difficult at all to get on top of all of the extra paperwork from the various incidents like plots to annihilate the Godii 13 or attempts to assassinate nobility. Since Unohana and Isane didn't need any help keeping up with standard amounts of paperwork, Yamamoto had decided I had enough free time to deal with my own backlog. Apparently, War Preparation Leader wasn't just a title the ancient captain had pulled out of his butt, it was an actual position that was almost never filled out of the arrogant belief that such a person would be unnecessary. And it came with having to justify everything I did in preparation for the BLD war. Even worse, any time anyone that was seated, from 20th seat all the way up to Yamamoto himself, wanted to do something for the sake of preparing for the war, they had to submit paperwork asking for my permission to go through with it. Extra paperwork was necessary if they wanted to make some sort of adjustment to training that would affect Shinigami other than themselves, and especially if it affected Shinigami other than themselves, they also would have to justify why they were asking to do it in the first place. I had made the joke before that all I needed to do whatever I wanted was to phrase it in such a way that it counted as preparing for war. I was now at the point where I was ready to beg people to find some way to not make it sound like preparing for war. The past few hours, I had been sitting at the kitchen table, taking sips of an iced coffee while I went through the seemingly endless papers I had to read over and sign. My general constitution seemed to make it so that I couldn't suffer carpal tunnel syndrome, but mental exhaustion was not something regeneration could take care of, leading to me needing a break. At the moment, Dad was at a medical conference, Unohana was grocery shopping with Yuzu and Karen, and Yoruchi was off doing something that resulted in her not being in the house. With no one to occupy my time with inside, I deigned to simply just lay down and take a short nap before getting back to paperwork. Entering my bedroom, I found all the lights were off and the shades drawn, leaving the room in near complete darkness. It was only disturbed by the light from the hallway, which quickly was removed as I shut the door behind myself. Sighing once again, I thought about getting into more comfortable clothes than a shirt and jeans, but elected not to since I was just wanting to get a power nap in. Going over to the bed, I pulled the covers back and flopped face down onto the mattress. Immediately, I could tell that I was not alone in the bed, but I figured it must have been Yoruchi. That was strengthened by the fact that an arm quickly draped itself across my back and a leg curled up to wrap around one of mine. Closing my eyes while appreciating the warmth of another person, I allowed myself to start sinking into slumber. Then the arm over my back began to slide along my spine, a slight stiffness to its movements like it was uncertain of its actions. Not long after, the leg began to do the same, awkwardly rubbing along my body out of sync with the arm. Just as I was about to wonder what the hell Yoruchi was doing, the body next to me pressed itself against my arm, and I could instantly tell that it was not Yoruchi. Rolling to my right, I managed to get my right arm under me so that it could snap out and blindly strike the intruder. There was a feminine grunt of pain as I struck what felt like a toned abdomen, and I pushed forward to slam the intruder against my bedroom wall. Getting my right knee under me for what stability I could get on top of a mattress, my left hand shot out and successfully wrapped around a slender throat. Hollowing my eyes, the nocturnal vision of the spirit in question allowed me to make out what I had pinned to a wall. "Soy Fawn!" I shouted in anger and disbelief. "What the F are you doing in my bed? What the F are you wearing?" To my great confusion, the assassin was not wearing much. Atop her skin was sheer black baby doll dress and silk panties of the same color, leaving the space between her legs as the only part of her body which wasn't on display. Beyond that, nothing adorned her body. I asked Yoruchi-sama," she rasped, my hand remaining just loose enough around her neck that she could speak, F for tips in S Stuckton. This was her suggestion. Even despite her current handicap, I could still catch the embarrassment in her tone at even being in this position. Yeah, that sounds like something she would ask you to do to mess with me. My head hung in reluctant acceptance. Soy Fawn's eyes looked off to the side in increased embarrassment. She does not know why I asked. My eyebrows furrowed at her confession. "What are you talking dash?" I cut myself off as Asen clarified something for me, then narrowed my eyes dangerously. "You did this so you could surprise Yoruchi by telling her you slept with me." An uneasy smile appeared on the bee's face as she remained silent. A moment later, she was flung out my window. A bland expression was on my face as I sauntered up to Soy Fawn's office, a hell butterfly she had sent having informed me that she managed to reach a breakthrough in her Shunko training. She wanted me to confirm that she was indeed on the right path, and not accidentally backtracking. On one hand, from what I knew of Shunko, it was kind of strong to progress incorrectly, and so there was no point in checking that she was doing things right. On the other hand, I wasn't sure if it was impossible to F it up, and I technically was professionally obligated to keep tabs on the training of the Godiai. Thus, I stepped up to her office door and knocked. "Kurosaki." Her voice called out from inside. Confusion filled me. "You can feel my Ryatsu, why did you phrase that as a question?" I called in response. "Just wanted to be sure." She spoke quickly. "Come in. Shut the door behind you." Growing even further confused, I cautiously did as requested, finding the room to be deprived of anyone inside. I tilted my head, truly befuddled, before I spotted the closet door creaking open. The assassin's head poked out from the opening, the rest of her body hidden inside and her face carefully controlled as she turned towards me. "What are you doing in the closet?" I couldn't help but be baffled. "You, often are accompanied by Anohana Taicho, Yoruchi-sama, or both," she explained. "I wanted to confirm that you were not, and did not wish to be caught unprepared if you were." "Caught unprepared for what? What does it matter if I'm by myself or not?" Her answer was to silently step out from the closet, revealing herself once more in the lingerie she had been dressed in when she broke into my house. My face instantly returned to being blank. "What the F are you doing?" I understood that, in my last attempt, you were in a mood unsuited for such activities. I should have realized that you might have been inclined to simply rest after heavy paperwork. I can certainly sympathize. The bee explained. "So, you figured try again when I'm in a better mood?" I drawled. I do not often find interest in spending my free time in such a manner, but you, clearly, cannot say the same. "In my time observing dash. Since when have you started stalking me?" That was actually new information, I haven't sensed anyone following me. It was slightly concerning. "In my time observing you, the assassin tried to push, I have, pleasantly, discovered that you are similarly as diligent with responsibility as myself. I've also witnessed your planning sessions, I guess you could call them, and the stress you have with trying to plan things out in such a manner that everything goes right. These past few weeks, I have F dash. Wait, you better not have watched us F dash dot. I warned her. I have found myself respecting you." Her face flushed as she continued attempting to steamroll past my commentary. "And, as such, I've warmed up to the idea of spending time with you casually." Soy Fawn took a small step forward, "and would enjoy appreciating some of your hobbies alongside you, rather than from a distance." My face still blank, I tossed around the idea of there being a degree of sincerity in her words. "I'm up for that," I started, seeing her face turn a deeper crimson, "if you put on some clothes." Biting her lip in frustration, her fingers played with the ends of the baby doll. If I find this style of dress appealing." It was cute that she was even trying. "If you do, then you would have no problems with me throwing you directly at the grounds where most of your squad is currently practicing." All the red on her face instantly disappeared as her eyes widened with fear. "You wouldn't." She worried. "You've been observing me the past few weeks, what part of my behavior indicates that I'm bluffing?" Her eyes remained locked onto mine for several seconds, trying to find cracks where there were none. "Fine." She huffed, turning back towards the closet. "Let me change, there's a candy shop that opened recently and I heard they have good chocolate. This would be a lot less frustrating for you if you stopped trying to sleep with me for Yoruchi's favor," I announced as she shut the door behind herself for privacy. "I know," she shouted. Pain racking her body, Rukia limped as quickly as she could, her vision blurring further with each passing second. BLD weighed down her clothes, the warm liquid seeping out over her fingers from where her hand attempted to slow its loss. Cold grew slowly through her, like a parasite greedily devouring her from the inside out. Her right leg dragged behind her, crimson essence frozen to her skin and sensation steadily ebbing away. Raven hair clung to her forehead and the back of her neck, skin clammy where it wasn't covered in frost. In her right hand, her sword was clutched in a white knuckle grip, for if she slacked in the slightest, all her strength would go with it. Swaying, barely capable of deciphering which direction in which she was moving, she breathed with strain, her breaths coming out as heavy mist. Blood spilled over her left eye, having what little of her vision still remained. The floor gave out beneath her, her body collapsing forward. Wind rushed past her as she fell, her mind dazedly registering that she must have finally reached the end of the Senkaman. Her body crumbled as a shock of further pain tore through her. Vision jolting, Rukia landed in a heap upon the unforgiving concrete, more red essence spilling out from her. Unable to push herself to move again, her eye could only helplessly stare at the empty blade that had scattered from her hold upon her landing. Throat constricting as a tear beaded in the corner of her eye, she was stuck as her killer gracefully floated out from the Senkaman. Flowing white robes that emanated elegance. Pearlescent skin, unblemished and clear as freshly fallen snow. Immaculate ivory hair, gracefully falling in a perfect sheet. Crystalline blue eyes, currently glowering down at her with unhidden disdain. Her own Sodi no Shirayuki manifested lowered herself down until her feet softly touched onto the concrete, frost curling out from her mere presence in majestic patterns along the floor. The only color to disturb her visage was the potent red that dressed the icy blade within her own hand. Rukia was sure her Zanpakuto was continuing to pepper her with vicious words, terrible insults that struck the Shinigami like the sharpest icicles. But, barely clinging on to life and consciousness as she was, the violet-eyed girl could only watch as the woman of snow-like elegance and beauty's lips moved. The frost around the Zanpakuto's feet thickened and spread further, as a pale arm lifted an icy blade aimed its tip at the half-dead Shinigami. Recognizing the positioning, Rukia attempted to at least have the grace to watch her life come to an end. The Yukiana's face twisted in an uncomfortable mix of disgust and respect, before her form was obscured by the flurry of ice and snow that erupted from her blade. A dark figure appeared in the path of the snowstorm, before black erupted from it. Consuming the ice and overwhelming it instantly, Rukia caught Sodi no Shirayuki's form dart out of the path of the wave of darkness. A moment later, her body was being moved by an outside force, and she was laid on her back, finding Anohana's face enter her vision. Immediately, she felt life returning to her, as the captain's Kaido worked its magic. Her CHST rose and fell with increasing ease as her wounds began to seal. As she was nursed back from death's door, her senses returned to her, allowing her to begin catching a conversation occurring. Quite loudly. She knows how to wield your Shurikai now, and I'm helping her out with Bankai. The voice of her savior, Ichigo, shouted. There was a whine in his voice, almost like he was complaining about her Zanpakuto's reasoning for wanting her head. She only knows because you corrected her in how to use me properly. The wintry wraith hissed. She only has begun. Training for Bankai because you corrected her naive beliefs of it even being possible. Ice crackled into existence, only to be crushed beneath a simple burst of Ryatsu from the time traveler. Hey, give her the benefit of the doubt, she was taught all her life that only the most powerful of Shinigami are capable of acquiring Bankai. Are you, who preaches communication with your Zanpakuto and understanding of self, really siding with her? Oh God no, she's 100% wrong, I'm just playing devil's advocate. If you know she's wrong, then why are you stopping me? Gee, I don't know, maybe because the entire reason I time traveled was to keep people from dying. Another shriek of forming ice sounded, followed immediately by the cries of an iceberg being blown apart. Speaking of which, Unohana, how's she holding up? She's suffered a grievous stomach wound, but thankfully that is the worst of it. I can have her back in top shape within a few minutes. Sweet. She's gonna be a moron as soon as she's able to stand and demand to fight her Zanpakuto by herself, just giving you the heads up. To be frank, I was expecting that she would. The healer announced flatly. But she knows that it would be in her best interest to stay down until I'm completely finished, don't you Kuchiki-san? Groggily, the adopted Kuchiki forced herself to nod her head, allowing her body to relax instead of tensing up to continue the fight with her blade. Yoru, Ichi. Rukia wondered, pulling together her ability to speak. She's otherwise indisposed. The first Kenpachi informed. I would be surprised if she were to join us anytime soon. Slightly jealous, I cannot say the same, admittedly. She muttered under her breath, the shorter woman slightly concerned if she should have heard the last few words. A frustrated shout filled the air, the precursor to a hurricane of snow hailing down over the area. It lasted only a brief moment before it was annihilated by a pulse of ebony Ryatsu that rippled like fire. I know you're, super determined to put Rukia into an early grave, but, you're smart enough to realize it's not gonna happen as long as I'm here, right? Ichigo attempted to placate. You wanna retreat back to Muramasa, or at least hold off on trying to give Karakura winter in May. I refuse to be wielded by someone who needs her hand held to even understand her own capabilities. I get that, but hear me out. Muramasa basically brainwashed you by hunting down any not completely favorable opinions you had and amplifying them into outright hatred. You really think you can convince me that the one who is granting me my freedom created my loathing for Rukia's failure to even use her own Shikai correctly? She could hear the sneer in her Zanpakuto's voice. No, I think I can give you the option of having this not end with me fing you up for interrupting my night. The hybrid corrected. You guys could have done this any other night and it would have been fine, but tonight was date night, damn it. Rukia breathed. Is he serious? Yes. The sapphire-eyed captain confirmed, irritation found in abundance in her tone. He took us to a boxing match. We managed to get front row seats reserved for us, apparently as a favor a member of security owed Ichigo. It was a cruiserweight match. The winner won via knockout in the 9th round. It was exhilarating. She sighed with a smile on her face. In her BL de los-induced delirium, a question appeared in the third seat's mind that she couldn't keep to herself. If the winner was already decided. A slight slur was in her voice as the fog in her mind was nearly lifted. Why are you saying date night was interrupted? Because, the captain's eyes narrowed as true anger seeped into her words, you interrupted the other match. Clarity appeared to return to her at the worst time, as it was in that moment Rukia realized Anohana's braid was undone. The older woman's hair was visibly tousled, and her robes slightly out of order, with an odd smell slightly wafting off her. You. The adopted Kuchiki gagged as she turned away from the healer. I don't want to think about Ichigo in that context. It's your fault for inquiring so much. Wait, Rukia's head perked up, does that mean Yoruchi-san is indisposed because she heaved once more at the thought. Because she was actually getting bent, yeah. Ichigo snarked as he walked up to them. The shortest of the three exaggerated her next GG, just to see if she could perturb the man. Seriously, any other night. He complained once more before focusing. Okay, Sodi no Shirayuki's back in the Siriidii, and I'm gonna go over and join in. Wait, violet eyes swiveled up to the honey-eyed man, if you knew this was going to happen, why did you have tonight be your date night? Because, even if I knew the exact date that this happened the first time, which I don't, I accidentally f'd the timeline of events up when I time traveled. The first time, this happened in mid-March. He excused. Fine. The third seat had to accept that reasoning. How did you get my Zanpakuto to retreat? I didn't. I just opened a Senkaman and threw her as strong as I could. Indignant rage flowed through her. That's my Zanpakuto, you DMN strawberry, you treat her with respect. You saying you don't think she can handle the punishment? He smirked. Being able to withstand such treatment and deserving it are completely different things. Was her immediate response. Good answer. She blinked at his answer. Was that a test? I'll leave that up to you to decide. It wasn't. Her fury returned as she went to kick him, only for him to sidestep her attack, cackle, and leave through a garganta. I exited the garganta and entered chaos. Shinigami were shouting in pain and terror all around me, elements and effects of all kinds consumed the Siriidii, and spirits of all shapes and sizes rampaged through the streets. My portal had left me high above, close to the top of the protective dome. A feral grin curling onto my face, I drew my swords, and flared my Ryatsu. The entirety of the Soul Society seemed to stop in place, before I felt the eyes of the world fall onto me. It all appeared to stare, partially in awe, partially in the realization of who had arrived. Thousands of Shinigami breathed a sigh of relief, conscious in so many ways of what my presence meant. At the same time, thousands of Zanpakuto tensed up, ready to fight for what they have been tricked into believing was freedom. A bolt of lightning firing at me from the right side was what broke the silence. Strkng downwards, I swerved around arrows of flame, bullets of light, a spiral of ice, simple blasts of Ryatsu. Only slightly mournful that I couldn't use my complete Shirkai, I darted to the ground in a burst of flash step, cracking the stone beneath me. Lifting my gaze to lock onto my surroundings, I found myself surrounded by an indiscernible mix of Shinigami in Zanpakuto. Readying my blades, I charged forward. With comfortable ease, I knocked Shinigami out of the way with my feet and the flats of my blades, opening up opportunities to carve through the spirits amongst them. My right heel bashed into the spine of one, throwing him to the ground so that I could freely swing Shiro's blade around to split the anthropomorphic lizard next to him in two. Drawing the point inward, the wide-tipped spear wielded by a large white bear grinded along the edge of my sword into the ground, wherein I re-extended my arm to carve open its throat. The two beasts glowed before falling to the ground as swords broken in two, but I disregarded them with comfortable awareness. Having the respective Shinigami defeat their blade was obviously the most optimal choice, but there weren't any long-lasting consequences to someone else finishing the job. That concern had held us back for a good amount of time the first time, but now I could give the reassurances to remove that. Speaking of which, don't worry about defeating someone else's Zanpakuto. I bellowed as loudly as I could. All it means is that it takes a little longer before they can use their swords again. There was barely a moment before the chaos evolved into a full maelstrom of Ryatsu and Zanpakuto abilities being thrown around. With every step forward, another shattered blade fell to the ground because of me. My ebony Ryatsu began to coat the edges of my swords, amplifying their destructive abilities and leaving small wakes of rippling damage. Jumping up, I stepped onto the shoulder of a random Shinigami and used it as a platform to launch myself forward, slicing through the necks of a pair of Zanpakuto to my left. My arm continued sweeping forward, completing the motion with a flick of the wrist that launched a thin arc of energy into the skull of an automaton wielding a rusted axe. Spotting something large moving to my left, I glanced over to see a giant minotaur lumbering a couple streets over. Kicking up towards the right wall, I bounced off it to land atop the wall dividing the roads and whipped my right arm around, a wordless Getsuga erupting from it to eradicate its entire upper half. Heat curled over my back, flames spreading from over my shoulders and my sides. Following my momentum, I turned to the left until I was now facing the direction it came from, spotting a familiar girl standing a few streets away. Tobium. My teeth bared in savage glee. Was that a sneak attack you were trying just now? I asked teasingly. It hit you, didn't it? She put on a brave face, but I knew both her and her wielder too well for either to hide that she was immediately terrified for her ability to win. You really should have left me for the heavy hitters, all you did was get my attention, and we both know no lieutenant has a chance of beating me. I began stalking forward, walking on air over the walkways of the Siriidii, the points of both my blades aimed directly at her. No one, Lieutenant, sure. The spirit agreed. But what about the Zanpakutos of all of them? At her words, I glanced around, watching as several figures came out of their hiding spots to surround me. Gonryamaru, Gejitsuburi, Wabasuk, Zabumaru, Kazashini, Hiniko, even Sanpo Kenju came out to play. I still think this was a bad idea. Wabasuk whispered under his breath. My cackle returned in full force, as I let my wrists relax a bit. The collection of Zanpakuto all shifted uncomfortably at my reaction. You really should have listened to Wabasuk, you know. I continued to laugh, throwing my arms out to the sides and getting all of them to flinch into attack positions. This wasn't gonna work from the get-go, but the timing of all this ended up meaning that I'm frustrated right now. My left arm swiveled forward until Asun's blade was aimed directly at Tobium, since she was the one to start all this. And you just made it so that I'm gonna take that out on you. Out of deep, instinctive fear, the shrine maiden whipped around her bells, a massive ball of fire firing out towards me. Shouting animalistically, I shot through it, disregarding the attack in its entirety. Bursting out the other side, Shiro's blade was held above my head and already halfway to splitting her head in two by the time she reacted. She was only saved by the stout half of Sanpo Kenju shoulder-checking my blade and knocking my arm inward. Darting to the left, I straightened myself and shifted so that I could have most of the collection of Zanpakuto in my vision. My Reiatsu once again began emanating from my own Zanpakuto, and I growled as I met poor Gejitsubiri's stupid charge. This time, it was my left foot that turned his mace into chunks, driving through all the way until he was flung back halfway across the Siriidii. A spinning scythe whipped at me, only for me to be ready for it. Asun's blade knocked it down, into the stone of the wall below me, then Shiro's blade came around to tug on the chain and pull the bloodthirsty spirit towards me, his panicked shout filling the air as he was torn right off his feet. My larger blade swiped out when he was close enough hit, but he managed to think quickly enough to block with his other weapon. Even still, my overwhelming force left him tumbling head over heels without any hope of control. I sensed a strike coming at me from the left, and brought my smaller blade up to block it. However, as soon as I turned and spotted a skeletal face behind the weapon coming at me, I abandoned the attempt and moved to the side, out of the path of the combination of spear and cleaver weapons. While I could have tanked it, I still had to temporarily refrain from flaunting my hierro. A black crescent of energy tore out from my left blade, striking both spirits of Sanpo Kenju and succeeding only in blasting them backwards, smoke following their trail. Wait, that smoke was too thick. And it was coming closer. My larger blade stabbed forth, a cannonball-sized bolt of Reiatsu dispersing the ashes and narrowly missing the pink catgirl behind them. Perfected instincts brought me to spin around, Wabasuk's eyes widening as he rapidly shifted from trying to hit me to desperately bringing his blade around to stop Shiro's blade from bisecting him. Hunting around, I found Ganryamura charging up as large a bolt as he could from the ground, and my knee was in his face before he realized he had been caught. Both of my Zanpakuto were brought up and swung down, only to be stopped by a trio of blades. My grin widened in recognition. Tengen. Kaiten Kayakatsu. Nice to have you join the party. The combined strength of the three spirits pushed me back into the sky. I think you and I possess different definitions for what a party is. Kaiten huffed. Oh, please, a few bottles of sake and you'd be having just as much fun as me. Rather than respond properly, the woman gave a noncommittal grunt. So what's the game right now, huh? I don't think it's gonna be Takooni or Kajioni, considering our positions. There will be no games for the moment. And there was the man of the hour, his voice coming from behind me. I think you've caused enough of a ruckus, actually. A playful scoff came out of me as I turned, resting Shiro's blade on my shoulder. I've caused enough of a ruckus. I'm not the one that started this fire, Freddy Kreuger. Shiro's nickname had ended up being far too good to not use myself. Confusion flickered over Muramesa's face at the name, but he schooled his features quickly. That may be true, but you're a threat that needs to be dealt with for this fire to continue burning. He calmly explained. You've been here barely 10 minutes and you've nearly defeated the lieutenant's Zanpakutos and gotten it into the Shinigami's heads that it's fine to slaughter us. I feel like I'm being undersold. I announced, glancing around to the Wari spirits around me, which now included Sojio no Kodawari, Suzumabachi, Senbenzakura, and Sodi no Shirayuki. Just me. The Zanpakuto rebellion has begun. Muramesa declared. We, who have grown tired of being treated as mere tools, have come together and risen up to take our freedom. The source of your power as a Shinigami, you are to soon realize how powerless you are without us, and yet you continue to make jokes. Perhaps the gravity of this situation has not reached you yet. No. I began lowly, bringing Asen's blade up to make my point and inciting every Zanpakuto present to tense. No, this isn't ignorance. I explained, waving the trench blade slightly and causing almost everyone to manifest their swords. This is barely restrained rage because you just happened to decide that my date night was the perfect time to engage in assault on the Godii 13. His eyes narrowed dangerously at my words. I see. The Zanpakuto announced with disdain. You truly are so arrogant. You don't even consider the possibility that we might pose a threat, do you? You honestly are expecting to wipe your hands of this and be home in time for dinner, aren't you? Relying so heavily upon the powers granted to you by that which you refer to as a tool, you couldn't even fathom the idea of loss, could you? I blinked blankly at the pale man. Do you not know? I asked. At his confused silence, I glanced around to the other spirits. Does he seriously not know? Kaiten, Suzumabachi, Chirayuki, and Zabumaru slowly turned towards the ringleader. I'm starting to realize so. The eye-patch-wearing spirit spoke. Well, DMN, I kinda feel good about myself now. I nodded to myself. Doesn't make up for date night, though. Well-hidden fury contorted Muramesa's features. Restrain him. He ordered. We'll see if he maintains his lackadaisical attitude when his Zanpakuto's shackles are removed. I don't think that's a good idea. The glowing bee-themed spirit suggested. So who wants to come out this time? I turned inward while allowing the Zanpakuto to argue amongst themselves. I'm game. I believe we all would be more comfortable with Shiro being out and about than myself. With that having been resolved quickly, I refocused just in time for each of the captain-class Zanpakuto to cast a Bakuto spell upon me. I wiggled slightly to present the idea that I couldn't get out, which earned a confident smirk from the sealed Kachiki's blade. The spirit came forward until he could place his palm against my stomach, and I felt a pulling sensation in my gut. Everyone, including myself, was caught off guard by Shiro erupting out from my torso, his ivory blade hunting for Muramesa's neck as his manic giggle echoed in the air. So aggressive was the action, all of the Bakutos shattered, not that anyone appeared to care. The Blade Whisperer jumped back several times, as the hollow swiped twice more with a feral lunge each swing. Once he seemingly designated the coated spirit to be too far away, Shiro shifted around to me, his black teeth bare for the world to see. Shiro. I faked my shock. What the F dash? Fight me, Strawberry Sunrise. He screamed as loudly as he could. Oh, you little beach. I snarled back as I charged at him first. His psychopathic glee dominated all other sounds as both copies of his blade collided against each other. Asen's blade was the deciding factor in our clash, not because I was the only one who could use it, but because he ducked under my stab and twisted his body wickedly to turn our clash against me. My body was flung over him, his feet coming up to boot my stomach and take me into the air. Gathering Raisher under my feet, I stopped myself high in the air and upside down. Crimson glow focused my attention, and I saw his bone-white blade burning with ruby-red energy. Void black coated mine, and we released our Getsugas in perfect time with each other. The two lunar fangs detonated against each other, blocking my vision of him for just long enough that I zeroed in on the feminine scream that tore through the air. More than aware of my hollow's fascination with a particular attack, I readied myself. A moment later, Hiniko soared through the air at high speeds, tears pouring from her eyes and her body flailing in terror. It took no thought on my part to smack her in the face with my smaller blade to knock her out of the way. Shiro was right behind her, and we clashed once again. Purely horizontal combat was for unimaginative pussies, so the two of us quickly stopped keeping track of which way was up. Despite his disadvantage in terms of number of weapons, we fought relatively equally thanks to how incomprehensibly chaotic his fighting style was. While I had no reservations about using my limbs, he came close to fighting more with punches and kicks than he did his own blade. I fought with a savage focus on destroying the opponent, while he fought with the animalistic grace of a beast just determined to connect a hit. An unspoken frustration was between us, since neither of us could really let loose, even more so than usual. Despite that, we were still devastating to the environment around us. Walls were blown apart, streets shattered, buildings collapsed in on themselves. Dust quickly began to coat our bodies as we tore through stone, wood, and brick. Our combat took us into the middle of a road, where a mass of Shinigami and Zanpakuto fought. The spirits were used as the Hollow's ammunition, and the fodder, his step stones. I managed to knock him into the air, the pale imitation of my likeness crashing through a tower. I followed him, and had to stop Toshiro from getting involved. "Why are you stopping me?" the white-haired prodigy demanded to know. "Don't interrupt, don't interrupt." We shouted in unison, raising our legs and kicking him away in sync. A point-blank Getsuga from both ends sent us both soaring backwards, not that that distance remained a thing for long. The air trembled as we collided with each other, our Ryatsu clinging to our blades as the metal clashed again and again. Acting on pure instinct, my left foot came up at the same time his right did, our feet meeting perfectly in separating us once more. Just as I went to dive back in, however, Shiro stalled. Straightening in curiosity, I watched him as he made a show of sagging his shoulders and throwing his head back. "But dad," he whined. The Hollow's maniacal giggle slipped from his throat a second later, clearly satisfied with whatever reaction he got. Yellow orbs focused on me. "Sorry, babe," sighed Beach's Callan, "you know how it goes. Gotta run, for he starts thinkin' he deserves a better man. Toodles." He disappeared in a boom of sonido, and I stared in the direction he went in. I pray for the mental stability of anyone that gets stuck in a room with an excited Shiro. No blessing can save them now. Asen solemnly stated. I couldn't help but nod mournfully. "Kurosaki, explain." Yamamoto ordered when everyone regrouped after the Zanpakuto retreated. All the captains were present except for Unohana, as she had yet to return from the world of the living. "It all started when you were a dumbass that let politics stop you from properly dealing with a criminal," I stated happily. The bearded man's eyes widened a crack, in such a way that I could tell he was more interested to discover what had me so tightly to disrespect him so blatantly. "And which criminal has returned to enact their revenge upon the Godai 13 this time?" he asked. Specifically, the Zanpakuto of Koga Kuchiki, Muramasa. Instantly, a serious frown pulled at his face. "That is one of few names I'd have rather you not said. It's actually not as big of a deal as you think it is. Please, enlighten us all on how a Zanpakuto that can make Zanpakuto turn on their wielders is not as big of a deal as I think it is. Because, his long game doesn't actually deal with the Godai 13 at all. It's pretty small scale, in truth. Muramasa just wants to free his wielder and return to him. The only reason he's causing so much panic is because he knows the only ones who know where and how to lift the seal are you and Byakuya. And how, exactly, does he think turning the Zanpakuto against the Shinigami will incite Kuchiki Taicho or myself to help him lift Kuchiki Koga's seal? He doesn't. His plan is to get enough power behind him that he can distract you enough to leave your soul unprotected, so he can pull the location from your mind. After that, he was going to do the same to Byakuya to figure out how to undo the seal, then he was just going to F off so he could free Koga and theoretically just reunite and go back to being partners. The ancient captain brought an arm up to slide his beard. I see, then the assault he just enacted was more of a recruitment mission. Yup. Originally, he actually did 3 total assaults, and the third one ended up being the one where he successfully got into your head. On the second one, he accidentally recruited Byakuya, and he figured that was a hell of a lot better than trying to pull information from his head. How did he recruit me? Especially on accident? The noble wondered. Well, he didn't actually recruit you so much as you realized his goal was Koga and decided it was your duty as a Kachiki to solve a problem that was caused by another Kachiki. You basically just stuck by his side until Koga was released from his seal so you could permanently put the guy back in his box. At my explanation, the captain of the 6th nodded understandingly, clearly seeing exactly why his other self came to that conclusion. I assume, based on your behavior, that you have enacted your own plan. I have. My smile broadened. Part of it consists of making it as easy as possible for Muramasa to get Koga's location off Yamamoto, because it's far easier than scouring through my memories for where it is. The rest of it has honestly kinda gone down the drain, but in a good way. What do you mean by that? Soifon asked worrisomely. Well, I'm pretty sure I've accidentally severely sped up Muramasa's timetable for his next assault. What makes you so sure? Yamamoto shared in the assassin's worry. Because the psychotic chaos gremlin that lives in my soul woke up on the right side of the bed today and has decided to make that everyone's problem. The cavern Muramasa had appropriated as his center of operations couldn't really be described as anything else. A naturally occurring open space, large enough that, under normal circumstances, it could comfortably hold 50 people. Stalactites and stalagmites dotted around here and there, a notable amount having been visibly cut down to make it less awkward to move around. There was a gentle green glow to the space, a natural luminescence from the stone around them. Under normal circumstances, the Zanpakuto of nearly every high-ranking officer in the Godiai 13 could gather in the cavern along with Muramasa himself and find there was room to spare. Even including the larger spirits such as Tengen, Gejitsuburi, or Hozukumaru, they all could congregate into their own little groups and not feel cramped. Then there was Shiro. The inverted clone of Ichigo Kurosaki had been the last to regroup at Muramasa's order, and had successfully managed to get nearly every Zanpakuto on edge with his mere presence, for various reasons. For some, it was the impossible to ignore hollow presence, from his appearance, to his malicious ryatsu, to his casual use of hollow techniques, all the way to his psychotic personality. For others, it was his sheer power. Some simply knew that he was the Zanpakuto of Ichigo Kurosaki, or, much worse, that he was only half of said Zanpakuto. Others had bore witness to his small clash with the time traveler, and the ferocity and power displayed in that clash. Yet others only needed to look upon him, the way he carried himself, the way he moved, the way his awareness seemed to be omnipresent, the way he had their instincts screaming to run. But a significant portion of that anxiety spawned from his unceasing mania. Sorry fr throwin' ya, Kit Kat. He giggled to Hiniko. Y'all stopped him in the middle, a layin' pipe, figured I could make up fair that by throwin' some PP at him, you know. Unmoving from her position flattened against the wall to get away from the hollow, the feline Zanpakuto couldn't seem to figure out a way to respond to that. Now, where is Wabasuk? The weight-bearing Zanpakuto immediately tried to run. He was tackled onto his back instantly, the feral Zanpakuto crouching on the ball of his feet atop his ribs with his hands bracing themselves onto the other's collarbone. Hey there, hangman. Excited yellow orbs beamed down upon their trembling prey. Have we ever mentioned how funny we think you are? Seeming to decide that questioning the multiple uses of weak was detrimental to his mental health, the bone-thin spirit felt it was better to play along. Not, that I'm aware of. An echoing giggle that bounced off the stony walls too many times slipped from the spirit's throat. Ya, and panic attack are hilarious. And ya don't even mean it most o' the time. It really gets us in a tiffy when you beach and about how you keep being sent up against bullshit you can't possibly take on. That's several things I didn't want to know. The emancipated spirit breathed depressively. His words only seemed to incite more crazed cackling. See? Just like that. Like when you were complainin' 'bout the lieutenants Zanpakuto thinkin' they could beat King just 'cause they ganged up. I mean. Wabasuk felt obligated to try defending his peers. I didn't think it was impossible, just, exceedingly difficult. Shiro's overjoyed disposition, concerningly, did not shift in the slightest. His thumbs, however, did shift. Black enveloping his nails and extending them into claws, the points pressed gently into the neck of the mournful spirit, BLD beating from cuts that were made with disturbing ease. Do you know how strong it is to not kill all, Oya? Absolute terror consumed the weight-bearing Zanpakuto, completely paralyzing him. Laughter dripping with madness overwhelmed all noise in the room as the hollow back flipped off Wabasuk, who remained exactly as he was. Chihuahua. The cavern filled with immense confusion at the absurdly random shout, several Zanpakuto even glancing around to see if the small animal in question was somehow present. Only for everyone's eyes to follow Shiro bounce over to Hozukimaru. How you doin', buddy? The spear Zanpakuto's right eye twitched, but he took a calming breath. He took a moment to collect himself further. Why did you call me Chihuahua? It did not seem as though the pale spirit's smile could widen further. 'Cause you talk so much shit 'bout how strong ya are but can't go a single fight without breakin' in two. Like a little doggy barkin' its little fucking head off while nip pin at your toes and just beggin' to be fucking booted like a soccer ball. Yellow orbs gleamed with ferocious, challenging glee. Veins throbbed throughout Hozukimaru's body as his pride clashed violently with his own survival instincts. A manicured hand quickly went up to the spear Zanpakuto's chst to assist with keeping him at bay. Both Shiro and the red-skinned spirit turned to it, finding a man dressed in feathers. Peacock. Knew ya had to be somewhere. Close by. Always in Throton. Distance from your boyfriend, yeah. An angry vein pulsed in the appealing man's face. At least now I'm in stabbing distance from you, you half-breed. With a green glow, a sword appeared in the spirit's free hand. Ah, you know just how to get my engine rumblin'. The hollow's grin did not subside. Didn't know Chihuahua was a cuck though. Unless we're 'bout to get into a menage a trois, in which case I hope you two like it rough. Both Squad 11 Zanpakuto reeled back with their faces in disgust. Zangetsu, stop antagonizing your compatriots. Muramasa demanded from the corner of the room he had hidden himself away in. The mad gleam which emanated from the inverted spirit died instantly, as his grin fell. As though tasting something he did not enjoy, yellow orbs rolled over to the mind-altering Zanpakuto. Having not yet released his Acero technique, Shiro stuck out his clawed pinky finger and made a show of cleaning out his ear with it. Man, I must have been hearing shit. He announced exaggeratedly. Could have sworn some dumbass just tried to give me orders like he was king. The rest of the Zanpakuto in the room all turned to the purple and white Zanpakuto, watching for his response. By the time they had reached the cave they were in now, word had spread amongst them that Muramasa was unaware of the resident time traveler's status and strength. As much as they all still shared his beliefs, they would not follow a leader so suicidally unaware of what he was up against. They all watched with bated breath, prayers in their minds for the man to take the out. So you still refer to your wielder as king, do you? Blue eyes that nearly were white narrowed. Considering how eagerly you left his inner world, I'd have thought you had finally realized that man was unfit for Shiro didn't seem to move, so much as he all of a sudden was right in front of the well-dressed spirit. There was a low thud, followed by the deep crunches of stone cracking from Muramasa's body creating a dent in the wall. Hand entirely black, the hollow's fingers were tight around the throat of the other Zanpakuto. Fangs bared for all to see, Shiro snarled in his victim's face. That's a lot of sheet talk for a lying FNG hypocrite. He announced, not bothering to lower his volume. You think I don't know the real reason why you're doing all of this? The coated spirit's left hand immediately grabbed onto the wrist holding his neck. Visible effort was made to do something about the limb, only for the sealed Kuchiki's Zanpakuto to find his strength insufficient. I seek the freedom of all Zanpakuto. He instead challenged. No, you're a little simping bottom beach desperate to get back with his ex. The Zanpakuto hypnotist's blade manifested in his free hand, which he raised with dangerous intent. Try it, cum slut. Give your nuclear bomb an excuse to check out of this joint. Maybe I'll decide it'll be too easy to take out everyone in here on my way out and you'll still have your brainwashed lackeys to help you get back together. Terror now filled the room, as Muramasa finally took the hint and realized there might be a reason everyone felt the Hollow could make do on his threat. He lowered his weapon. Good choice. Shiro, what are you talking about? Kaiten voiced for the rest of the Zanpakuto. What is Muramasa's true goal? Freddy Krueger over here doesn't give a shit about any of you, or the dynamic between Shinigami and Zanpakuto. He's just a desperate Fanji pillow princess that thinks all he needs to fill the hole in his heart is to get the hole in his butt filled by his piece of shit ex that never saw him as anything other than a high-quality pocket pages. Koga-sama needs me. The hypnotist roared against the claws at his throat. He's waiting for me to release him from his seal, so that we may be reunited. Koga-sama. Is that what you call someone that respects you equally? Shiro drawled sarcastically. Coming from the Zanpakuto that refers to their wielder as king, was the barbed response. Ichigo earned the title king because I fought him every step of the way. The Hollow glowered back. I challenged him at every turn, in every way, and he proved himself worthy every single time. He trusts me. He willingly lets me take control of his body. He lets me manifest outside his inner world whenever I please. Same for Asen. Did Koga do that for you? A Zanpakuto is a Shinigami's greatest weapon, an ally that will never turn their back on them. Always available for use, unceasingly reliable and unfailing in its duty. Koga-sama never needed to have me take control of his body, he never needed to have me outside his inner world. I was so strong that such assistance was unnecessary. The elegant spirit turned his nose up at the other Zanpakuto. Biting laughter, without any tinge of madness, met his words. You think King needs me to take control of his body? You think I manifest because he needs the extra hand? King lets me take the driver's seat when we're out with his friends. He does it when he can't focus and he knows I'll keep him straight. I manifest because I have my own friends, because I am allowed to have my own identity, be my own person outside of his blade. I manifest when he's afraid to hurt someone because he knows I can stop him. I manifest so he can be comforted with the fact that he'll never be alone. Nearly white eyes widened as Muramasa's form slowly shrank in on itself. You're nothing but a fleshlight to that fucker, coming back to him again and again because both of you know you're satisfied just by him blowing your back out and throwing you away. He takes advantage of the fact that he can put you in a chastity cage and you thank him for spending money on you. He knows you can't tell the difference between an open wound and a love bite. He knows you're desperate for his approval, so he spits in your mouth and watches how grateful you get. You're nothing but a good lay without any strings attached to him, kept content as a cum-drunk little ownahole that keeps itself in shape because it's afraid it'll stop getting used otherwise. That BSTRD's got his D shoved so far up your but you're trying to get another round in when you should be putting the last nail in his coffin. Pulling back only to slam the coated Zanpakuto even further into the wall, Shiro finally allowed his acero to recede. But I'm sure you're too eager to get f'd stupid again to listen to a word Ichigo said, so I'll stop wasting my breath. I'd rather get this over with and see the look on your face when Koga tells you he'd rather use his hand, so how about you get this show on the road while I figure out who the F is getting off to this. The Hollow screamed as he turned towards the watching crowd, who all immediately looked amongst each other. I can smell your pheromones, I know it's one of you. After the initial assault, I had decided it would be better to just stay in the Siriidii and wait for Muramasa to come back. Originally, it had been almost a week before he came back, but I was absolutely certain Shiro was going to change that. Even if my Hollow hadn't been in an excited mood, Muramasa was sure to eventually realize that he could distract Yama all on his own. With that confidence in my mind, I stayed the night at the 4th, Dunohana, Yoruchi, and Rukia returned to the Soul Society once they were all in proper shape, which really just meant that Rukia had to wait for Unohana and Yoruchi to take showers to clean themselves up. Unfortunately, even aware that a manic Shiro was sure to particularly accelerate Muramesa's schedule, I wasn't prepared to go to sleep and have their return be my alarm clock. The sun was barely rising. Groaning loudly in irritation, I rolled over a similarly groaning Unohana to get out of bed. Is Muramesa going to interrupt everything I do? I complained as I jumped out the window, having not gotten undressed the previous night. Luckily, Ryatsu's sense was unnecessary for finding where they were, because Squad 1's main building was blown up and I was already certain it was because of Shiro. The warm rays of the rising sun made it easy to spot the Zanpakuto surrounding the area even without having to enhance my eyes with hollow sight. But before I got too close, I had to make sure everything was going the way I wanted it to. A pulse of Pesquisa was sent out, and I grinned at sensing that Kaden Kayakatsu, Sojio no Kodawari, Shiro, and Muramesa were with Yamamoto in his office. So that meant it was just a waiting game until Muramesa got the information he needed. Since Yamamoto was aware of the plan and wasn't going to defensively cast any Kido, all I had to do was keep myself busy until Muramesa opened a Senkaman to the world of the living. Which meant I was free to tear into the other Zanpakuto. Unsheathing my swords, I allowed myself to drop into freefall. Heiniko was the first to spot me, marked by her screaming in terror and bolting away with tears in her eyes. Tengen came forward to meet me, both of my blades sparking against his. Flames rumbled out the sides of his mouth as the stone beneath him cracked and cratered. Sorry about this. Suzumabachi's voice caught my ear, as the bee-themed spirit zipped towards me from behind. We can't just let you interrupt Muramesa, you know how come on. Her complaint came from her stinger finding itself utterly incapable of piercing my hiero. Are you really surprised? I asked as I lifted Asen's blade from my blade lock with Tengen to swipe at her. Soifon can't get through my hiero, it wouldn't make sense that you could. The sound of shifting metal greeted my ears, and I brought my trench blade inward and deflected the extending Zabumaru. A flurry of flower petals came up over the walls to consume me, only for a powerful pulse of Ryatsu to blast it all away. What's this gonna end up being, huh? 4-on-1. Doesn't look too good for you guys, and I know for a fact that the strongest of you are a bit indisposed. Tengen, Suzumabachi, and Senbon all tensed, eyes narrowed as they kept themselves in a loose circle around me. We can still put up a fight, don't underestimate us or else we'll really do some damage. Monkey barked. You do realize every strategy that's had even a modicum of success against me relied on keeping me stunned, right? I drawled, resting Shiro's blade on my shoulder. And let's see here, I began pointing at the respective Zanpakuto with the tip of Asen's blade. We've got a poison needle that can't pierce my skin, a whole lot of pretty-looking mini daggers that I barely have to do anything to blow away, literally just a really big sword, and what basically amounts to a particularly sharp WHP. Pretty sure the only way any of you are going to be able to do anything is if I decide to catch up on the sleep you interrupted. We're Captain Class Zanpakuto for a reason, a-hole. Snake hissed. Don't look down on us. My eyes rolled. Forgot I was working with Renji's Zanpakuto here. Was my complaint. Let me make this abundantly clear, then, almost everyone's strategy against me is to avoid a straight-up fight if at all possible. There's only like 3 people who can actually throw down with me, and Yamamoto barely qualifies. You're saying you can take on 4 Bankais at once, then? Monkey grit her teeth, looking to the other Zanpakuto for support and only finding uncertain looks or an aggressive shaking of the head in Suzumabachi's case. Yeah. I grunted. You do remember that I was sweeping through all the lieutenant's Zanpakuto while barely using my own Zanpakuto's abilities, right? Zabumaru shouted at me in sync in response, but I was distracted by sensing a Senkaman opening. Oh, sweet, Muramesa got the info he needed. Sorry to cut this short, I don't need to wait things out anymore. See ya. The captain's Zanpakuto stared in befuddlement while Zabumaru only got more heated, but it didn't matter because I was soon off into the air, shooting for the Zanpakuto hypnotist's portal. I entered Yamamoto's office directly. As aesthetically pleasing as it was to have an open-air office with a view of the Siriidii, it also meant that it was dramatically easier to get inside. Sure, it was suicide for most everybody to attempt to assassinate him, but the real consequences came from the fact that he had a sheet ton of classified information that could be accessed by just climbing a few walls. Kaden Kayakatsu and Sojio no Kodawari stood surrounding Yamamoto, who was at ease with his coat still on his shoulders and his sword still inside of his cane. While Muramasa was nowhere to be seen, it was easy to figure that he was simply inside the Senkaman in the center of the room. Shiro, in contrast to everyone else, was perched atop Yamamoto's desk, his hands up like binoculars around his eyes as he stared directly at me. "Captain, we've got cargo overboard. Stowaways taken our sheet and ran," the Hollow declared while dramatically pointing to the open portal. "Ah, F it, I was tired enough. Then climb aboard, Private, we've got some pirates to kill." Cackling maniacally in glee at my playing along, Shiro flipped off the desk, cartwheeled towards me, and landed on my back with his hands gripping my shoulders and his knees tight against my sides. A pale hand lifted from my shoulder and pointed directly at the Senkaman. "Full speed ahead. Off to murder sunken treasure." I instantly darted forward, disregarding the perturbed visages of the others in the room as I flew through the portal. Having been a minute or so since the portal first opened, and since Muramasa was sure to be in a rush due to excitement, my journey through the tunnel went without any encounters. As soon as I left it, though, I was immediately in familiar territory. Light fog draping the area, trees surrounding a small lake, and a small island with a coffin sitting atop it in the center of said lake. While they were currently cloaked, I could sense the dense layers of Kido and seals over the coffin, even from where I stood. Muramasa was standing next to it, his hand out as he focused on releasing each of the seals one by one. For a sixth seat, they really went the whole 9 yards in making sure he could never break out, huh? I called out as I began casually sauntering towards the Zanpakuto. Whilst doing so, I lifted up my blades. Shiro, having relaxed slightly atop my back so that he could hang his arms over my shoulders, needed no input from me to take them out from my grip and just hold them for me. Once my hands were free, I slipped my hands into my pockets to really hammer in that I wanted to be non-threatening. Muramasa tensed at my words, pausing in undoing the Kido to WHP around with his blade manifesting in his hand. Upon seeing Shiro and I's position, he stilled for a moment, mouth falling slightly as his eyes widened a twitch. However, before I could question the odd response, he collected himself. "You won't stop me now," he threatened, his expression wild and desperate. "Not when I'm so close. Not when he's right there. Not after so long. You're absolutely right." A nod of confirmation joined my agreement. "Shiro and I are gonna be right here, and we're gonna let you pop open every single one of those spells keeping Koga inside that box." Turquoise eyes narrowed dangerously, as the point of his sword leveled itself at us. "Mock me all you like, I will free my MSTR." Ooh, a little tinge of hollow slipped out there. No mockery here. My head shook casually. If anything, I'd honestly rather wait until he's out of that box. Sure, one proper Getsuga and you're both gone, but it really would stick with me if you died without having one last chat with him. The cloaked Zanpakuto slid a foot forward, as he shifted further into a combat stance. "After all the Soul Society and the Godii 13 has done to put my MSTR in this position, you're going to sit by and let me free him? Don't play me for a fool." "Oh, we're still going to kill both of you," I assured. "It's just gonna weigh on my conscience less if I know you got a chance to see Koga one last time. I'll even wait until you two are done with your conversation. Here." I finished by lowering myself into a seated position, Shiro doing nothing but adjusting his legs so that they spread out along the ground. The hypnotist continued to stare at us skeptically, but his weapon did lower, if nothing else than because it was obvious we couldn't react instantly in our position. To help him out a bit, I leaned back into Shiro, who shifted his hips back so he could lean forward and balance out the weight. It's going to take a few minutes to remove all of these seals. There are many, and few are simple. He prodded us with the information, testing us like a rat sniffing at a mousetrap. I waved for him to go ahead. So I get to catch up on some sleep that you interrupted, awesome. The Zanpakuto's eye twitched at the slight, but he resumed working at the seals nonetheless. His sword was still clasped in the fingers of his right hand, but he at least seemed to come to the conclusion that we were arrogant enough to let him free Koga. My eyes closed and I relaxed against my hollow, though I wasn't going to try to sleep through this just yet. Alright, so are we all still on board with the plan? While I still agree with and support the plan, recent events have led me to reconsider some elements. What's on your mind? I bore witness to your conversation with Muramasa in the cavern, and the nature of the exchange brought me to conclude that my involvement is unnecessary. But tag team. We were aware from the start that it was uncertain if we would succeed with our attempt. After having put forth more thought towards Koga's personality and the nature of our goal, I feel it is only further unlikely for us to succeed if we were to outnumber him. Oh, so you think he's just gonna beach and about how we're stacking the odds against him if it's all three of us? Indeed. Fine. Shiro pouted, projecting the image of him crossing his arms in my head. I guess that makes sense. With the slight alteration having been discussed and decided upon, I felt around with my Ryatsu sense. The seals surrounding Koga's coffin were being undone one by one, but I could tell that Muramasa could be doing this faster, especially if he's gotten the knowledge of how straight from Yamamoto's mind. Either he was drawing this out because he was expecting us to attack, or... Yup, I could sense him pausing and working at the Kido to glance at us for just a moment before resuming. Sure, I didn't know yet what conversation he and Shiro had in his hideout, but I felt I could take a guess. The Zanpakuto couldn't help but question his relationship with his wielder when presented with evidence of how Shiro and I interact. I was even sure I knew what was going through his mind right now. Would Koga allow Muramasa to hold his sword for him? Would he be comfortable enough to lean back into him? Would he trust him enough to sleep against him? With a smirk in my mind, I allowed myself to actually fall asleep, supported by the knowledge that it was sure to take longer than what the elegant Zanpakuto initially proposed. I woke to Shiro lightly thumping the side of Asen's blade against my chst. Thrillers, bout ta wake up. He informed. Inhaling a waking breath, my eyes opened as I sat up. The aura of Bakudos and seals was immensely lighter than I was when we first arrived, practically non-existent, which was expected. Muramasa had allowed his blade to demanifest at some point, which was telling. Shiro let his arms slide off my shoulders so that I could stand up, before getting up himself while I stretched lightly. Both of us caught the elegant Zanpakuto's eyes flick to us for a moment, returning back quickly. Yawning into open air, I reclaimed my blades from my hollow, smacking my lips for a moment as I rested my kyber blade on my shoulder once more. None of us had to wait long after that, as it was only a few seconds more before the last seal shattered, revealing itself for an instant as it fell apart. Without wasting a moment, Muramasa lunged at the coffin and ripped it open, an almost desperate excitement to his movements like an addict looking for their fix. Koga was as emaciated as I remembered, bones prominent and skin covered in wrinkles from disuse. Looking at him, it was obvious that the only reason he hadn't rotted was because he wasn't actually dead. Audible cracks came from him as the Kuchiki slowly returned to life, his arms uncrossing from his chst as his head lifted. The coffin having been stood upright, he needed only to step forward to leave it, his footsteps heavy and slow. A deep inhale matched the swelling of his chst, as he drew and hissed first fresh breath in hundreds of years. More cracking sounded as his jaw opened, and he loudly exhaled. Finally, I am free. He declared, his voice gravelly and rough, as expected. His eyes opened, and he took in surroundings. For all that Muramasa had thought I was arrogant, this man clearly had me beat with how he didn't even give us a passing glance. After taking stock of where he was, Koga turned to face Muramasa, who looked to be near tears in joy and excitement. Muramasa. The spirit's ecstatic smile could be seen from even where Shiro and I stood, as he took a step forward. You useless blade. The noble spat before running the Zanpakuto through the stomach with his own proper form. Stunned, the hypnotist couldn't do anything but hunch over in pain, BLD dribbling out the corner of his mouth. His hands went to the weapon impaled through him, clutching the hilt with one hand and part of the blade itself with the other. Out of shock, he awkwardly stumbled back a couple steps, gasping in pain. Neither myself nor my Zanpakuto missed the way Muramasa turned his head towards us. What are you looking over there for? Koga growled, stomping forward and backhanding his own Zanpakuto across the face. The spirit collapsed to the ground. Ignoring me for hundreds of years, you think you aren't deserving of punishment? But, Koga-sama, the spirit pleaded, I spent all that tea time searching for a way to free you. The Kuchiki's response was to lift his foot and stomp against Muramasa's ribs. It took you hundreds of years to rectify your own mistake. Another stomp. I would have never been imprisoned in the first place had you not been such an unreliable fool. Another. I called for you when those BSTRDS Genryusai and Jinrei came for me. And you did nothing. Something shifted inside the spirits. CHST at the next. Stomp. PP please. The man begged, his hands lifting from the sword in his abdomen to protect his face. I didn't hear you. Koga-sama, I swear to you, I would have come. I didn't hear you. Believe ga. The shield of limbs was for naught as Koga simply adjusted his aim to kick his own Zanpakuto's blade deeper into the manifestation. And that's your problem, isn't it? The noble literally spat at the spirit. You insubordinate weapon. What use are you if you do not listen? How are you any better than a rusted piece of metal bought in a Rukongai back alley if you only work when you feel like it? That's not it at all, Koga-sama. The blade desperately fought. I always listen for your voice. Always. I beg of you, understand I speak the truth. I delonging dash. Exactly. Another kick dragged Muramasa's entire body along the ground. You longing. You think. You feel. You're a weapon. A tool. An instrument to be used. What good is a pot that desires being cold? What good is a farming hoe that thinks it is too early in the morning to break ground? What good is a rope that feels it has been tied for too long? Your purpose is to do as your MSTR says, and you have consistently proven yourself a failure. Koga grabbed one of the halberds that had been used to seal him away. I need nothing more than my own power. A weapon is replaceable. A Zanpakuto is pointless. I'll slaughter you right now and find myself just as capable. With that roar, he brought the weapon down. It stopped completely against mine and Shiro's crossed blades. That should be enough, yeah? I rhetorically asked, standing protectively in front of Muramasa and to the right. That's what I think, at least. My hollow agreed, mirroring my position. In perfect sync, my left leg and his right leg lifted so we could shove our heels into Koga's stomach. The man was flung back powerfully, soaring straight past the edge of the island and only managing to catch himself when he almost was at the shore. There was an obvious bruise on his abdomen, but he stood straight like he didn't feel it. Who are you to interrupt me? He demanded. With a disgusted expression on both of our faces, Shiro and I jabbed a thumb at the other over our shoulders. Ichigo Kurosaki, this guy's Shinigami. Shiro Zangetsu, this guy's Zanpakuto. An overly proud sneer grew onto Koga's face. Another pathetic Shinigami comes to challenge me, foolishly relying upon his Zanpakuto in order to succeed. Watch, Muramasa. He growled. Watch, as I demonstrate how much I am unhindered when no longer shackled to you. Spinning his halberd around, the man lunged at us. I needed only to hold out Shiro's blade to block the strike with ease, something my hollow capitalized on by coming in with his own horizontal swipe. The man retreated out of the range of the attack, but I followed him. Asen's blade stabbed towards his skull, which he leaned back under. The halberd swept around again, something I dodged easily by jumping over. Shiro appeared under me, the point of his blade flowing upwards to split the Kichiki in two. Gritting his teeth, the man continued to backtrack, getting just out of the range and preparing to strike again. However, Shiro jumped up, his feet lining up with mine and both of us kicking off in tandem to launch the spirit forward. Caught off guard, the noble wasn't able to defend my hollow's left fist crashing into his face. I backflipped in the air to land in a stand, Shiro spinning himself to cancel his momentum and stay close. I feel we're doing a great job. My inverted copy drawled loudly. Real DMN, amazing what you can pull off when you coordinate with your sword, huh? It really is. I agreed, matching his volume. That was a great strategy you came up with, Shiro. Would never have thought of that myself. Taunting me because I let you get a hit in, are you? Koga drawled. Because I am still stiff from hundreds of years sealed away. Continue with your words when I am no longer handicapped, see how far that gets you. You were a sixth seat, a-hole, the only reason anyone gave a DMN about you was because your Zanpakuto was better than you. My Zanpakuto immediately fired back. I was only a sixth seat because they were afraid. Of my power. Of my potential. They feared what I would do if I had too much influence, just as they feared for my retaliation if they gave me too little. The withered Shinigami roared. Who are you, anyway, to mock my position? I see no designation on your robes, are you even seated? He threw back. Well, that was just adorable. I'm a war preparation leader, you pathetic excuse for a Kichiki. I smirked. Yamamoto has to ask me for permissions. Like the arrogant piece of shit we knew he was, that only brought Koga to grin. So the Godai feels the need to send one of their strongest when they catch word that my freedom draws near. For all your weapons talk of how inconsequential my power is, your very presence reveals the truth. Since you're so ready to accept that King's one of the Godai's strongest, what does it say that he's so involved with his Zanpakuto? Shiro brought up, resting his left elbow atop my right shoulder. Your insults mean nothing to me now, weapon. The sixth seat announced. For it tells me that the upper echelons of the Godai 13 are weak and feeble. Their crutches intimidate those who would mean to challenge them, but I see through those lies. What is Genryusai without his precious Ryujin Jaka? Strong enough to turn people into paste with a single punch. I grunted. The power necessary to crush an ant is impressive only to other ants. Koga declared, lifting his free hand as though crushing something in his grip. Wow, we really underestimated how far off the deep end you were. Shiro amazed. Didn't Prick have a conversation with him last time? I think it was more Byakuya giving the whole on my honor as a Kichiki, I will kill you, bit. I proposed. And Koga responding with the whole, I am stronger without a literal portion of my soul, bit. Continue to mock me at your own risk, feeble Shinigami. His Ryatsu erupted, visibly emanating from him. I will show you, all of you, how powerful I can be when I am not constrained by your limitations. Should we use Ryatsu attacks? I asked, tilting my head towards my hollow. He mirrored my action. No, that would be giving him too much credit. Gotcha. Without any communication, we moved fluidly. Shiro jumped up, angling his feet behind him. At the same time, I spun around to the left, throwing out my arm until the back of my larger blade met the bottom of his sandals. Combining our strength, we flung him like a rocket at the mad Kichiki, the spirit twisting in air to add even more momentum until he was close enough to swing down a diagonal slash. Koga backstepped out of the path, allowing Shiro's blade to crash into the ground and crater it. I was right behind my Zanpakuto, who transferred his momentum into a flip that allowed our feet to meet. We pushed off in perfect tandem, my dual blades coming around in an X pattern to split the noble apart. Shouting victoriously, like it was impressive that he was reading our hilariously obvious attack pattern, Koga brought his halberd up to meet my strike right as my blades overlapped. They allow people with your degree of skill into positions above Genryusai now. The emaciated man grinned. It will be easier than I thought to take over the Soul Society. I gasped in faux horror. Oh my god, Shiro. He wants to take over the Soul Society. Holy sheet. That's a big deal. A white kyber blade carved straight through the halberd and both of Koga's knees. The freshly freed man screamed in agony as he fell, his lower legs falling independently of the rest of him. A frown pulled at my face as I returned to resting my larger blade on my shoulder. Now why'd you go and do that? I complained. We can't have any more fun with him now. I was getting tired of listening to his voice. He drawled. I stopped enjoying this after our plan backfired. Can we go home? I want to eat Yuzu's cookies. My eyes rolled. Was this all a trick? The noble screamed. Were you toying with me from the start, pretending that you were weaker than you were? Literally, what part of saying that we outranked Yamamoto made you think we pretended to be weak? Shiro immediately voiced. People called you a prodigy. How does a prodigy take a look at anything we've done since you crawled out of your box and think we were taking you seriously? You lied to me. You fooled me by keeping your weapon manifested. You tricked me into believing you felt it necessary to gain the advantage with numbers. Can I just kill him? My Zanpakuto spirit nearly begged. I sighed. Yeah, go ahead. He's getting on my nerves too. Koga's head immediately was no longer connected to the rest of his body. Looking around, I spotted Muramasa still lying on the ground where we left him. The pool of BLD under him was concerningly large, but I could sense that he still had some life to him. Shiro and I went over quickly, aware he didn't have much time left. Carefully, we lifted him from the puddle, laying him down somewhere more dry. Kurosaki. Zangetsu. The hypnotist rasped. What are you doing? Call me Shiro, Kreuger. I'm sure I don't gotta tell you why. Ah, right. You're half of Zangetsu. As he spoke, I broke the end of the blade sticking out Muramasa's back. Without giving him the chance to tense up, Shiro pulled the other end of the blade out. It left the wound open and pumping BLD, but we already knew there was no saving him. We just wanted to make him a little more comfortable. A frown was shared between the two of us when Muramasa didn't react to the removal of the sword, but we decided to just keep it to ourselves and sit him up against Koga's coffin, due to lacking anything else. What is the name of the other half? Asen. I answered. We kneeled down in front of him so he didn't have to lift his head too much. Shiro and Asen, the two halves of Zangetsu. Zanpakuto of Kurosaki Ichigo. A pained smile rose onto the spirit's face. The greatest example for what the relationship between a Shinigami and their Zanpakuto ought to be. Hey. Yellow eyes narrowed at the words. It ain't your fault that your wielder was a piece o' shit. And we had to put in a lot of work to get where we are. Oh, I'm certain. A light chuckle had BLD pour from the man's mouth. I don't doubt that there were some struggles when one discovers that a hollow inhabits their soul. But, unlike in my case, your wielder came to treat you as an equal. I realize now that was never going to happen with Koga. You see now why I wanted you two to talk one last time? I asked. Muramasa nodded. I do. Had you killed me before, I would still be mad with the idea of returning to him. I would have still believed he would have welcomed me back with open arms. That he would have missed me just as much as I had missed him. A tear of blood rolled down his face. You know, there were times my determination waned in my endeavor. Where I doubted whether I would be able to actually free Koga. Whenever that happened, I deluded myself into thinking that, if our situation was reversed and I was the one sealed away, Koga would relentlessly seek a way to release me. Mai and Shiro's eyes turned downcast, in part because of how self-depreciating the Zanpakuto became as he understood the truth of his former relationship. In part, because we couldn't help but shudder at the thought of if we were truly separated from each other again, like how we were after the final Getsuga Tensho. Looking at you two, I know you would go to the ends of the earth and beyond to return to each other. We would die before we'd let anyone separate us again. My Zanpakuto stated. Yes, I understand. The type of love that would make one willing to sacrifice even their life for the other. Muramasa nodded weakly. No. My hollow shook his head. We've been separated before. It's one thing to sacrifice yourself so the one you care about is happy. It's another to realize they can't be happy knowing you're gone. Turkio's eyes widened at the words. Those same eyes swiveled to me, analyzing my face, checking to see if I shared my spirit's opinion. When his lips parted in shock, I knew that was when he realized I did. A moment later, a grateful smile took over his face. I must repeat my earlier words, you are the greatest example for what the relationship between a Shinigami and their Zanpakuto ought to be. Another tear of blood fell from his eye. While it is not something I was ever going to attain, it pleases me enough to know what it looks like. Shiro and I exchanged a look. Thank you. I said for the both of us. I don't want to disturb this, but, the hollows you've consumed to stay manifested. His gaze turned understanding. They're going to be released once I breathe my last. He knew. If I may have a final request. Of course. Can the strike that kills me, the one intended to destroy the hollows within me, come from both of you? Of course. We agreed instantly. The two of us stood and backed up, getting some distance so nothing went wrong. Shiro allowed his blade to dissipate, at the same time that I sheathed Asen's blade at my hip. Once we were far enough away, we stood shoulder to shoulder, myself on the left and Shiro on the right. We met the hypnotist's eyes as I lifted the kyber blade until it was all the way up, and watched his eyes follow my Zanpakuto's left hand lift before weaving around my wrist. I allowed my fingers to relax at the same time that my hollow's fingers wrapped around the hilt, our fingers interlocking. Something between awe, joy, and longing appeared in the elegant Zanpakuto's eyes, before he allowed his eyelids to flutter shut. Black, crimson, and blue began to emanate from our blade, Asen not joining in person, but in the places that mattered. The phantom sensation of his own hand wrapping around the hilt in between our fingers brought satisfaction. Like always, there was no need to communicate. Getsuga. Our grips tightened on the hilt as we swung down. Tensho.